Chapter 86, Drinking. The soldiers below exchanged glances, yet not a single soul dared to take a step forward.
We
are willing to share the punishment. Over 100 voices rose in unison, fists clasped and bodies bowed, their sound reverberating through the heavens. Before the echoes of their words faded, including the squad leader, 100 soldiers had already grasped the heavy stone locks, commencing a punitive long run amidst swirling dust. Yuan Wei strode into the still-gathering crowd, his voice booming like thunder. "What are you all staring at? Disperse, disperse." The onlooking soldiers retreated like a receding tide, daring not to linger for even a moment. He approached Yi Qingwan, his broad hand descending heavily upon her shoulder, laughing heartily. "Brother A. Yuan, what remarkable skills. I, your elder brother, have struck gold this time, haha." From this moment forth, a Yuan officially became a soldier under his command. "General Yuan, you flatter me." Yi Qingwan replied with a respectful bow. "Are you being too formal?" Yuan Wei feigned displeasure. "Though you are now my subordinate, I still relish hearing you call me elder brother Yuan.
This
might be against protocol." Yi Qingwan's face revealed hesitation. Having joined the military, it seemed prudent to adhere to the regulations of propriety. "In the army, we are all brothers. Why such excessive formalities?" Yuan Wei waved dismissively. "With your abilities, given time, you will surely surpass me, your elder brother."
Then,
"Elder brother Yuan." Yi Qingwan acquiesced, though her tone still bore a hint of reluctance. "That's more like it." Yuan Wei beamed with delight and patted her shoulder with vigor. "Just as luck would have it, I have some free time now. Let me introduce you to our commander, the Northern Guardian King. The prince is most appreciative of talent and will undoubtedly recognize your worth. Were she an ordinary new recruit, he would never personally recommend her." Yet Yuan Wei held high hopes for a Yuan. Though currently merely a centurion, he sensed that she was destined for greatness.
The
Northern Guardian King. Yi Qingwan shook her head repeatedly, awkwardly chuckling. "There's no need. No need. I've just entered the military and have yet to achieve any merit. How could I dare to meet the prince so rashly? Brother A. Yuan, rest assured, the prince is exceptionally kind-hearted and not at all the ruthless figure depicted in rumors."
Come.
With that, he enthusiastically urged her towards the command tent. As they conversed, a contingent of horsemen approached from the distance, with the foremost figure clad in dark armor and a black robe. None other than the Northern Guardian King, Xiao Tingyuan. Yuan Wei called out excitedly from a distance, "The prince has returned." Yi Qingwan felt as if her soul had fled, turning on her heel to flee, leaving behind the words, "I have a stomachache. I must attend to the restroom." Before her voice faded, she had vanished between the tents. Xiao Zhiyuan looked up at the sound, and as Yuan Wei approached to pay his respects, he furrowed his brow slightly and inquired, "What is the matter?" Yuan Wei glanced back, only to find that Yi Qingwan had long since disappeared, and could only awkwardly reply, "I had intended to introduce the newly appointed centurion, a Yuan, to the prince, but unexpectedly, he was struck by a sudden stomachache, much to the prince's amusement." At the mention of a Yuan, Feiyu felt beads of cold sweat form on his forehead. An introduction. "I truly appreciate your effort." Xiao Zhiyuan's brow furrowed slightly. "A Yuan?" Yuan Wei replied enthusiastically, "Precisely. He is the centurion you personally appointed yesterday, remarkably skilled, a promising prospect. I thought." Before he could finish a sentence, he was interrupted by Feiyu's urgent cough. "Ahem, a mere centurion. Why should General Yuan be so concerned?" Xiao Zhiyuan turned his gaze to Feiyu, his eyes piercing. "I have heard that a Yuan is your distant relative. Is this individual truly reliable?" Feiyu's heart tightened, and he hastily bowed with cupped fists. "Your Highness, I would stake my life to guarantee that a Yuan poses no issues." Xiao Zhiyuan's gaze deepened. Indeed, a Yuan's various performances were quite remarkable. If that is the case, let him have ample opportunity for training. Xiao Zhiyuan ceased further discourse and directly entered the command tent. "Understood. Your subordinate comprehends." Feiyu discreetly wiped away the cold sweat. Yuan Wei dared not speak further, for military achievements must be earned through genuine valor. One cannot rely on others for support. Yi Qingwan hid behind a haystack, gazing from afar as that familiar figure disappeared behind the tent curtains, her heart a tumult of emotions. Was it right or wrong to deceive him in such a manner? If he were to discover the truth one day, would he harbor resentment towards her? That night, the moonlight flowed like silk. According to regulations, centurions made well in a tent of their own. Yi Qingwan finally acquired her own independent tent, no longer needing to share a sleeping space with Tai Niu and the others. "Your Highness." Feiyu approached, carrying brush, ink, paper, and inkstone, softly calling from outside the tent. "Enter." Feiyu meticulously arranged the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone upon the desk, remarking, "Your Highness, it is time to respond. The prince waits anxiously for your news, having instructed me to check for the arrival of 800 letters daily." Let it be for now. It has only been 2 days." The prince is ailing from longing for your highness, consumed by worry to the point of neglecting food and drink. Do you not feel any sympathy? What scheme are you concocting now? Speak plainly. I believe the prince has grown suspicious. Perhaps you should. Absolutely not. Alas. Poor prince. Fei Yu feigned a look of heartache. Cease with your insincere theatrics. Yi Qingwan approached the table, spread out the letter paper, and after a moment of contemplation, her pen flew across the page. In but a short while, she had completed her writing. She carefully folded the letter and sealed it with wax. Fei Yu exclaimed in astonishment. Is it finished already? He recalled how the prince would ponder over his letters for hours, inwardly sighing at the stark contrast. What else could it be? Yi Qingwan cast him a sidelong glance. Present it to him in a couple of days. The ink is still wet, and I fear he may discern something amiss. Understood. This was precisely why he had brought the ink supplies early, to alleviate the worries of both masters. By the way, tomorrow, please go to the nearby town and procure some dark rouge for me. I have run out and you understand, don't you? This disguised rouge was used most frequently, and it had run low quickly. She had only brought 2 boxes at the time. Fei Yu paused for a moment, then quickly realized. Dark-colored? Yes. Understood. Your Highness, rest assured. I shall personally go tomorrow. She nodded, feeling reassured only after entrusting the task to Fei Yu. At that moment, the coarse voice of Yuan Wei resonated from outside the tent. Brother A. Yuan, have you taken a break? Your elder brother has come to drink with you. The 2 individuals inside the tent exchanged startled glances. Fei Yu swiftly gathered the ink, brush, paper, and inkstone into his embrace, quickly concealing the wax-sealed letter within his garments. Almost simultaneously as he straightened up, the tent flap was abruptly drawn aside. Yuan Wei strode into the tent, cradling a hefty wine jar, his bronze-hued face alight with hearty laughter, while grasping 2 coarse earthenware bowls in his hands. Upon catching sight of Fei Yu within the tent, his laughter grew even more resounding. Ah, Brother Fei Yu is here too? What a delightful coincidence. Come, come, come. Just in time. This wine is more than ample. He proudly shook the wine jar in his hand, the clay seal bursting open, and an intensely fragrant aroma of wine instantly wafted through the air. Look here. This is genuine Pelusiang, packed with potency. Not everyone has the fortune to indulge in this. Fei Yu furrowed his brow tightly, stepping forward to position himself between Yuan Wei and Yi Qingwan, extending his hand to push him away. This is nonsense. What are you drinking at this late hour? A Yuan is exhausted today and needs to rest. Come now, if you wish to drink, I shall accompany you outside. Hey, why are you pushing me? Yuan Wei stood firmly, akin to an iron tower unwavering, and clutched the wine jar even tighter. This wine was specially brought to celebrate my brother A. Yuan's appointment. How could I allow it to go to waste on you? If we are to drink, it must be between the 2 of us first. Chapter 87. The Prince's Summons. Upon witnessing the situation, Yi Qingwan immediately cast a calming glance towards Fei Yu. Understanding her intent, Fei Yu feigned displeasure, retracting her hand with a sulky tone. All right, I shall take my leave then. How could one forget their brothers when there is good wine? General Yuan. You truly are rather stingy. With that, she made as if to exit. Hey, don't go. Let's share a drink. Yuan Wei called out enthusiastically from behind. But Fei Yu had already slipped out from behind the tent curtain without a backward glance. Yi Qingwan hastily stepped forward, clasping her hands in greeting, and expressed her astonishment. Brother Yuan, you are far too gracious. Such affection overwhelms me. What nonsense. You are deserving of it. Yuan Wei replied with a hearty laugh, brimming with sincerity. He approached the modest wooden table within the tent, unceremoniously thrusting a ceramic bowl into Yi Qingwan's hands. He then lifted the wine jar, pouring the clear liquid generously. Yuan Wei filled his own bowl and, holding it aloft, with a solemn expression declared, Brother A. Yuan, I'll not say more. This first bowl is to honor your life-saving grace. I drink to it, and you may indulge as you wish. With that, he tilted his head back and down the potent liquor in one swift motion, leaving not a drop behind. After finishing, he slammed the empty bowl onto the table, exhaling a cloud of alcohol-laden breath, and fixed a piercing gaze upon Yi Qingwan. Holding the bowl, Yi Qingwan felt the fierce potency of the drink. Merely inhaling its aroma was intoxicating. However, with the tension palpable, she knew that to decline would only raise suspicion. Resolutely, she mimicked Yuan Wei's actions and drank deeply. The fiery liquid scorched her throat, nearly provoking a cough. It was far more potent than the pear blossom wine she typically indulged in. She forced down the discomfort, and warmth surged through her face. Excellent. Refreshing. Truly, you are my good brother. Upon witnessing her reaction, Yuan Wei laughed heartily, thoroughly pleased, and immediately filled 2 more bowls. Brother Yuan, Do take it slow, Yi Qingwan thought to herself in dismay.
Ah,
Today is a day of joy. How could we not drink to our heart's content? Yuan Wei waved dismissively, and before long, half of the second bowl was already consumed. He set the bowl down, his large hand once again clapping onto Yi Qingwan's shoulder. Instinctively, she attempted to sidestep, but was a moment too late. Yuan Wei leaned in closer, his breath heavy with a scent of alcohol. Brother, your physique appears frail. Yet, who would have thought you possess such strength? I am genuinely impressed. From now on, in my presence, you may walk with confidence. The fumes from his breath enveloped her, and Yi Qingwan felt herself stiffening, subtly shifting back half a step, forcing a strained smile. Brother is jesting. There are protocols in the military. Protocols are one thing, camaraderie is another. Yuan Wei thumped the table once more, exclaiming, I can see you are truly capable. The prince has yet to recognize it, but in due time. In due time, when you achieve military merit, I shall certainly speak on your behalf to the prince. He swayed slightly, the effects of the 2 bowls of liquor evident in his demeanor. Yi Qingwan rushed to support him, urging, Brother, you have had enough. You should return to rest. Just then, Fei Yu, unable to quell her worry, returned. Upon entering, she beheld Yuan Wei's tipsy state and immediately approached to assist him outside, teasingly remarking, with such a meager tolerance, you seek companionship for drinking?
who do you look down upon?
I have not yet had my fill. Yuan Wei grumbled as he was led away. Watching them depart, Yi Qingwan finally breathed a sigh of relief. She herself felt woozy. The after-effects of the potent drink were weighing on her. Stumbling to the edge of the couch, she collapsed onto it and fell into a deep slumber. The following morning, Yi Qingwan awoke, her head throbbing painfully, her mouth parched. She rubbed her temples and propped herself up on the edge of the bed, only to realize her binding cloth had loosened during her sleep. Startled, she leapt up and hastily adjusted herself. Just then, Fei Yu's voice came from outside. Yuan, are you awake? After a moment's hesitation, she responded, Come in. The tent flap was lifted, and Fei Yu entered, carrying a hangover remedy. Noticing Yi Qingwan's pale complexion, she handed the bowl to her, saying, Your Highness, quickly drink this hangover soup. It's made from kudzu root, and the kitchen's old Zhang always keeps it on hand. Gratefully, Yi Qingwan accepted it, saying, Thank you. Holding her breath, she downed the bitter concoction in one gulp, feeling some relief from the tumult within. Fei Yu, with a pained expression, cautioned, Your Highness, you must not drink again. It is far too dangerous. No worries, I know my limits, Yi Qingwan replied. Suddenly, a boisterous shout echoed from outside the tent. Brother Yuan, are you sober yet? Come, it's time for drills at the training ground. Yuan Wei, a boisterous fellow, had entirely forgotten how he returned, only recalling the joy of yesterday's revelry. This General Yuan is indeed tenacious, Fei Yu remarked with a hint of exasperation. Never mind him. Let us go. She and Yi Qingwan exited the tent in succession. Outside, Yuan Wei stood with his hands on his hips, his rugged face not bearing the pallor of a hangover, but rather glowing with vigor. Upon spotting Yi Qingwan emerge, his eyes widened with enthusiasm, and he drew near, exclaiming, Good brother, I told you, despite your slender appearance, you possess remarkable resilience. Have you recovered so swiftly? Yi Qingwan managed a strained smile. Brother Yuan, your capacity for drink is commendable. I am in awe. However, my head still feels as if it has been struck by a drum. Ha ha ha. A few more rounds, and you'll build your tolerance. Yuan Wei laughed heartily, his gaze sweeping past Yi Qingwan to the somewhat pale Fei Yu, jesting, Look at that, Fei Yu's complexion is worse than yours. One might think he drank 3 bowls of strong liquor last night. Come, let us head to the training ground. The fresh air will remedy all ailments. With that, he unceremoniously draped an arm around Yi Qingwan's shoulder and strode towards the training ground. Fei Yu could only frown, watching them walk away. The morning training ground was already filled with the cacophony of battle cries, dust swirling in the air. Soldiers were practicing thrusts and blocks under the watchful commands of their instructors. When Yuan Wei and Yi Qingwan arrived, particularly as they approached the company of 100 new recruits, an immediate hush fell over the atmosphere. The previously lax posture of the recruits transformed into a rigid formation upon seeing a Yuan approach, standing at attention in silence. Yuan Wei, a seasoned veteran attuned to the nuances of military demeanor, raised an eyebrow, intrigued, and paused to observe, stroking the stubble on his chin. Upon noticing Yi Qingwan, Yang Mang hurried over, his previous arrogance replaced with respect, as he clasped his fists in greeting, saying, Yuan, you have arrived. The tone he adopted carried a greater reverence than that directed towards General Yuan Wei. Qingwan merely nodded slightly, her gaze sweeping across the ranks. The recruit stood tall, chests out, gazes fixed ahead, not daring to meet her eyes, the entire company enveloped in silence. Yuan Wei observed all of this with keen interest. Leaning closer to Qingwan, he nudged her with his shoulder and, lowering his voice, praised, "Impressive, brother.
Just one day?
I trained this bunch for half a month, and they never complied as readily. What spell have you cast upon them?" He could sense that their compliance was not mere pretense, but rather an authentic and profound respect. Just then, a messenger approached briskly, bowing and announcing, "Lord A. Yuan. The prince summons you." Chapter 88. Infiltration. Upon hearing this, Qingwan felt a jolt in her heart, her eyelids twitching. Could it be that he has discovered something? Yuan Wei glanced at Qingwan, a look of delight on his face. The prince has remembered brother A. Yuan. This is a good sign.
Qingwan stile terself.
Directing her attention to the messenger, inquiring, "Did the prince specify the reason?" The soldier replied respectfully, "I am unaware of the details, my lord."
Qingwan nodded, acknowledging, understood.
"I shall attend shortly." The young soldier bowed and withdrew. At that moment, Fei Yu approached briskly from a distance, saying, "A Yuan, may I have a word?"
Qingwan nodded.
Then turned to Yang Mang, commanding, "Yang Mang, continue leading the drills. Do not let up." "Yes." She followed Fei Yu to a secluded spot, and after ensuring no one was around, she whispered, "Why has the prince summoned me?" "It concerns the plague in the army," Fei Yu replied, his tone heavy. "The epidemic is spreading rapidly, and the medicine has proven ineffective. The number of afflicted is increasing, and the situation is dire. Do we have any countermeasures?" "The divine physician has devised a remedy, but we lack a crucial herb. This herb grows on the treacherous Qisha cliff within the borders of Beiyan, making it exceedingly difficult to procure. None of the apothecaries outside have it," he continued. "Is that why the prince wishes for me to go?" Qingwan raised her eyes, her gaze tranquil as water. "The prince, along with several generals, has conferred and unanimously deemed you an exceptional choice. Your skills are remarkable, and as a newcomer, you will attract less attention. Thus, you are the best candidate. Then give me the herb's illustration, and I shall set off immediately." "Absolutely not. My lady, you must not go. Perhaps you should reveal your identity to the prince? He would never allow you to take such risks. Precisely because of that." "I must go," she asserted with unwavering determination. "I am indeed the most suitable person for this task. Hand over the illustration of the herb, along with the map of Beiyan at once. But enough of this hesitation."
Quickly.
Reluctantly, Fei Yu retrieved the map and the illustration from his bosom, his hands trembling slightly as he handed them over. "My lady, you must return safely, otherwise the prince will surely have my head," he implored. "Once I procure the herbs, I will take full responsibility before him," she replied, turning to her tent to change into inconspicuous attire. She then hurried to the stables, selecting a powerful black steed renowned for its endurance. With a swift leap, she mounted the horse, cracked the whip, and sped out of the gates like an arrow released from its bow. Fei Yu watched her receding figure until it vanished, cold sweat trickling down his brow. He trembled, feeling a sense of dread at having concealed this from the prince. In the command tent, Fei Yu lifted the curtain and entered. Xiao Tingyuan stood before the sand table, his gaze piercing. "Where is she?" He did not lift his head, his voice as cold as ever. "Reporting to the prince. A Yuan has learned of the urgent situation and has set off alone. Decisive, indeed." "She is quite the woman," Xiao Tingyuan remarked, a hint of appreciation in his tone. Fei Yu bowed his head in silence, drenched in cold sweat. Xiao Tingyuan suddenly glanced at him. "You seem troubled. Is something amiss? Your Highness, if I have concealed something from you, would you forgive me?" He stammered, panic rising within him. "That would depend on what it is." Xiao Tingyuan replied, his tone still neutral. Fei Yu's throat felt dry. He swallowed hard, the words caught in his throat. "Are you worried about a Yuan?" Xiao Tingyuan turned to face him at last. With her abilities, she should face no danger in Beiyan. "Your Highness, I request permission to accompany her. It would be even more difficult for her to remain unnoticed alone. Your presence might complicate matters." No further discussion. "But, sir, what's the recent movement in Beiyan?" Xiao Tingyuan interrupted, shifting the topic. "The Qilinzi has recently ceased all activities, seemingly regrouping and stockpiling supplies. It is merely a facade. He undoubtedly has ulterior motives. Increase our personnel to investigate further." "Yes." Fei Yu clasped his fists and turned to leave. "Wait," Xiao Tingyuan's voice called from behind. "Ensure that a Yuan is being monitored as well." Dispatch a team of elite soldiers to the border to assist her, in case of unforeseen circumstances. Understood. Fei Yu silently exhaled, yet his heart remained suspended in anxiety. Yi Qingwan rode swiftly, her mind racing with strategies on how to infiltrate the Bei-Yen border. She was acutely aware of the stringent checks by the border guards, making a direct assault impossible. Thus, she had to rely on cunning. As she approached the first checkpoint, Yanliang Pass, she slowed her horse, surveying the situation at the gate. A long line of merchants awaited inspection, with the guards particularly vigilant towards solitary men. With a shift in thought, she turned her horse towards the forest beside the gate. After 2 days of observation, she discovered a pattern. Every day at noon, a convoy of supply carts would pass through, during which the guards exhibited a slight relaxation in their scrutiny. She smeared dirt on her cheeks, allowing her steed to gallop back, and waited for the convoy to arrive. At noon, the anticipated supply train appeared. Seizing the moment when the driver stepped into the woods, she stealthily slipped beneath the last cart, clinging to the axle. The train moved forward slowly, and after a cursory inspection, the guards permitted passage. As they approached the checkpoint, she held her breath, feeling the cart jolt as it crossed the threshold. Just as they were about to completely pass through, a voice called out, "Hold on." Yi Qingwan's heart raced. A guard approached. "This sack of supplies seems loose. Tighten it up." The driver complied, jumping down to rearrange the supplies. Yi Qingwan lay beneath the cart, mere inches from the guard, even able to see the mud caked on his boots. Time seemed to freeze as her heart thundered. Finally, the driver finished and the convoy resumed its journey. She had successfully infiltrated the Bei-Yen territory. Once in the town, she seized the opportunity during the driver's tea break to quietly slip off the cart and blend into the crowd. This was the closest town to the border. Shuafeng Town, bustling with activity and a mix of people. She had left in haste, unprepared, and without possessions. Fortunately, this area bordered the Great Liang and was frequented by many of its merchants, so she would not appear out of place. Her immediate concern was to acquire a set of local attire to facilitate her movements. However, she had only Great Liang copper coins, which were as worthless as scrap iron here. Luckily, Fei Yu had informed her that there were covert establishments nearby that could assist her. Navigating through several streets, she arrived at a modest tea house. Approaching the counter, she softly addressed the proprietor. "Sir, I would like a pot of Yu Chun tea." The proprietor paused, glancing up at her before continuing to wipe a coarse pottery bowl, responding nonchalantly, "We have no Yu Chun. However, I do have a pot of tea brewed from yesterday's rainwater. Would you care to taste it?" Yi Qingwan felt a wave of relief wash over her, maintaining her composure as she continued with a coded response. "Rainwater tea is rather insipid. Better to use spring water, which is more flavorful." Only then did the proprietor put down the bowl, glancing around before lowering his voice. "Please, this way. The back courtyard has fresh spring water, and I will brew you a pot." Yi Qingwan nodded and followed him through the bustling hall, lifting an old fabric curtain to enter a narrow courtyard cluttered with miscellaneous items. Upon entering, the proprietor swiftly turned, his earlier merchant demeanor replaced by a trained vigilance. He quickly clasped his fists in salute. "My code name is Mountain Eagle. At your service, my lord." Yi Qingwan exhaled, relieved to find a comrade. "Thank you. I need a set of common attire for a Bei-Yen man, some provisions, and also," she paused, "funds for Bei-Yen. Please follow me." Mountain Eagle led her to a more concealed room where a package lay on the table, already prepared with a carrier pigeon message. "Inside are the clothes, provisions, and water you require." He then produced a pouch of Bei-Yen currency and a small ingot of silver, sufficient for her journey. He also presented a more detailed parchment map, highlighting several patrol points. "This is the latest route to Qisha Cliff. Our people have marked the patrols. The cliff's perilous terrain and reddish cliffs make it easily identifiable." Yi Qingwan quickly checked the items, affirming everything was in order, and felt grateful for Fei Yu's meticulous arrangements. "Thank you. I shall change and depart immediately. Be cautious, my lord. In case of emergencies, you can contact our people at any tavern or tea house along the way," Mountain Eagle added. She nodded in acknowledgement, refraining from further conversation as he bowed and exited. Yi Qingwan donned a typical brown coarse cotton cloak worn by men in the Bei-Yen border, its length reaching her calves, cinched with a leather belt. And she wore sturdy boots. Now, she appeared as an authentic local farmer's son. With the map in hand, she meticulously reviewed it before stealthily merging into the crowds of Shuafeng Town, hastening towards Qisha Cliff. Chapter 89. It is he. Qisha Cliff lies in the northwestern desert region of Bei-Yen. From Shuafeng Town, one must traverse 2 border towns to reach the destination. Yi Qingwan purchased a magnificent steed for her travels in town, as she had anticipated. The patrols within the northern Yan territory were indeed far more relaxed than those beyond the borders, allowing her to pass through 2 cities with little effort. After several days of galloping, she finally arrived at the desolate northwest desert. While crossing a river at a desolate ford, Yi Qingwan paused to rest and replenish her water supply. Just as she crouched down to fill her container, she heard the distant clashing of weapons. Concealed among the reeds by the riverbank, she observed, though the distance made it difficult to discern faces. A group of merchants was being besieged and slaughtered by dozens of figures clad in black, their blades flashing ominously against the blood-soaked sands. The cries of the wounded and the whinnies of horses mingled with the howling winds. The black-clad assailants were evidently well prepared, their strikes lethal, and the battle was exceedingly brutal. Yi Qingwan remained a cold observer, reluctant to involve herself in this internecine conflict. Suddenly, a barrage of arrows sliced through the air. "The arrows are poisoned. Young master, flee." A voice shouted sharply. The leader of the merchants leaped into the river, narrowly evading a fatal blow, yet was swept downstream by the current. Landing precisely at the shallow bank where Yi Qingwan was concealed, gravely injured and unconscious. The black-clad killers swiftly combed the riverbank. Yi Qingwan glanced at the fallen figure, her brow furrowing. It was him, the northern Yan hostage, a familiar face from the palace. What brought him here? Could it be that he, too, sought medicinal herbs? As footsteps drew nearer, she had no time to ponder further. With a swift decision, she dragged him into the thicker reeds, covering his blood with earth and leaves, and used stones to create noise to divert the pursuing assassins. Once they had moved far away, she knelt to assess his injuries. Multiple knife wounds exposed bone, and an arrow had struck his left shoulder. Though not fatal, the wound was poisoned and quite troublesome. She had wished to remain uninvolved, yet considering the humiliation this hostage had endured in Daliang for many years, only to be hunted upon his return, her heart felt a pang of pity. "You truly have a charmed life," she murmured softly to herself. Without hesitation, she severed the arrow shaft, extracted the poisoned arrow, and retrieved the emergency herbs she carried to provide initial treatment, preserving his life. When Yan Nancheng gradually regained consciousness, the first sight that met his eyes was a stranger. As if recalling something, he suddenly attempted to rise, but a firm hand pressed him down. "Stay still if you wish to live," she said in a rough voice, her hands continuing to bind his shoulder.
Who are you?
His gaze turned cold, his body tensing. "I saved your life. What do you think?" Her tone was unfriendly, applying pressure as she bandaged him. "Thank you. May I ask your name?" he inquired cautiously. "I am called Ian," she replied, hesitating slightly, fabricating a name. "Thank you, Brother Ian," he said. "It is unwise to linger here. We must depart swiftly." Yi Qingwan nodded, aware that the assassins would surely return for a second search. "You have been poisoned and lost considerable blood. You cannot withstand much jostling. We should find a place to rest." She assisted him to his feet, feeling his unsteadiness. "This poison is potent. I can only suppress it temporarily. If an antidote is not found within 7 days, the toxin will reach the heart, and not even the most divine beings can save you." Yan Nancheng's complexion was pale, yet his demeanor remained composed. "No problem. 7 days will suffice." "Do you recognize this poison?" "Yenluo-san. It is a unique toxin concocted by my uncle, combining the scorpion heart herb and black sandvine juice found only in the northwest. Its composition is complex, and there is no known antidote." His tone was calm as if discussing someone else's affairs, yet he added, "The Qiang fruit from the red sand cliff is extremely young. Perhaps it can be used to counteract the poison." "That is too risky." Yi Qingwan frowned deeply. "We have no other choice," he replied resolutely. Yi Qingwan ceased to argue. There were no better options at present. "Brother Ian, you have come here to gather herbs, I presume?" Yan Nancheng suddenly spoke, his gaze laden with significance. "If you do not mind, may I accompany you? I am somewhat familiar with this desert." He sensed a degree of suspicion in the man before him and sought to inquire further, while keeping him close. Yi Qingwan considered, recognizing the safety of solitude. Yet since their paths aligned and he was familiar with the area, he might provide her with cover. Weighing the pros and cons, she nodded. "Very well. But you must heed my instructions. In your current condition, you cannot endure much strain." She then shifted the subject, raising her guard. "How did you discern that I am not from this region? Your accent, though you attempt to imitate it, a hint of the Jiangnan soft tone remains." His lips curled slightly in amusement. It was not uncommon for outsiders to come to Red Sand Cliff in search of herbs. As they conversed, they arrived at a wind-eroded cave. Yi Qingwan carefully surveyed her surroundings, noting the concealed entrance, seldom trodden by human feet. This should be safe. Let us rest here for the night. Agreed, Yan Nanqing nodded. As sunset approached, Yi Qingwan settled him down. Rest for now. I will gather some food. Her figure swiftly vanished into the forest. Within half an hour, she returned with 2 plump partridges, exclaiming, "Today as fortune is splendid. I managed to catch 2 mountain birds." Yan Nanqing glanced at her. Brother Ian possesses remarkable skills. Yi Qingwan smiled, not engaging further, as she deftly processed the feathers, ignited a bonfire, and set up a roasting spit. The firelight danced upon her weathered profile, and Yan Nanqing gazed quietly, though his brow furrowed deeper. In no time, the aroma of roasted meat wafted through the air. She tore off a leg of the bird and offered it to him. "It is ready to eat." "Thank you." He accepted the hot meat, devouring it heartily, unperturbed by the possibility of poisoning. His gaze occasionally lingered on Yi Qingwan, filled with scrutiny and curiosity. Feeling somewhat uneasy under his scrutiny, she gruffly inquired, "What are you staring at? Do I have flowers on my face?" Yan Nanqing averted his gaze, replying coolly, "I merely find Brother Ian's skills to be quite extraordinary. You do not resemble an ordinary herbalist." Yi Qingwan's heart skipped a beat, yet her expression remained unchanged. She bit into the meat, mumbling, "Having roamed the wilds for years, eking out a living, if I lacked this bit of skill, I would have long since fed the wolves, unlike you wealthy young masters, so tender and delicate." Yan Nanqing smiled noncommittally, refraining from further inquiry. Yet the doubt in his eyes did not dissipate. This man claiming to be Ian speaks with an accent and occasionally reveals a certain demeanor, along with a vague familiarity, all of which keep him on high alert. "What sort of herbs are you seeking at Red Sand Cliff?" He changed the subject. "A life-saving herb. Someone at home is ill," Yi Qingwan replied tersely, unwilling to elaborate further. The night passed in silence, both resting against the cave walls while maintaining a semblance of alertness, wary of each other, and the sounds from outside. Chapter 90. Fever. The following morning, as dawn broke, Yi Qingwan awoke. She examined Yan Nanqing's injuries. The poison was temporarily suppressed, yet his left shoulder remained dark and swollen, the prognosis grim. "Can you walk?" she inquired. "I am fine." Yan Nanqing gritted his teeth, rising with a pale face, yet an unwavering resolve. Yi Qingwan extinguished the fire completely, burying the remnants to erase their traces, then aided him as they staggered out of the cave, heading towards Red Sand Cliff. Though it was March, the desert's daytime climate was arid and sweltering, making their journey exceedingly arduous. Yan Nanqing's strength waned, and much of his weight rested on Yi Qingwan. Sweat soaked her clothing, also dampening the dark powder she used for disguise, revealing a hint of her originally fair skin at her neck. Yan Nanqing caught a glimpse and his gaze sharpened. Yet he said nothing. By midday, they found a small grove of poplar trees to rest briefly. Yi Qingwan handed him her water pouch. "Drink some water first." Just then, a flurry of urgent hoofbeats echoed from afar. Instantly, both became alert, swiftly concealing themselves behind the poplar trees. A contingent of black-clad knights surged towards them, their vigilant glances scanning the surroundings, evidently engaged in a second, more meticulous search. They belonged to his uncle. Yan Nanqing lowered his voice, his gaze icy. They were indeed relentless. Yi Qingwan held her breath, her hand stealthily resting on the dagger at her waist. "Are your people not here yet?" "I have left markers along the way. They should be arriving soon." The group of black knights lingered nearby for a moment, and the leader seemed to have caught sight of the traces they left behind the previous night. He gestured, and the formation slowed, beginning to fan out in search. They were perilously close to discovering their hiding place in the poplar forest. Yi Qingwan's mind raced. She whispered, "Stay here and do not move." Before Yan Nanqing could respond, she darted out like a shadow, deliberately creating a disturbance in the distance to attract the attention of one of the black-clad men. The knight immediately spurred his horse in pursuit. Yi Qingwan skillfully maneuvered through the terrain of the poplar forest, aware that she was on the verge of being caught. Suddenly, she pivoted, throwing a handful of sand into the air, and at the moment the knight's vision was obscured, she deftly slashed at the horse's leg with her dagger. The steed let out a pained whinny and collapsed, throwing the knight off balance. Without a moment's hesitation, Yi Qingwan approached and delivered a precise strike to the side of his neck, rendering him unconscious. The entire process was swift and silent. She quickly concealed both the man and his horse behind a sand dune, then silently returned to Yan Nanqing's side. He had witnessed the entire episode, a glimmer of surprise and admiration flashing in his eyes. Such skill and resourcefulness were not typical of an ordinary wanderer. Having eliminated one of their pursuers, their numbers diminished. They would soon notice the absence, and they must depart immediately. Qingwan, slightly breathless, pulled Yan Nanqing along as they hastily moved in another direction. After this encounter, Yan Nanqing's suspicions deepened, yet it was evident that she harbored no ill intentions towards him. At least for the moment, this Yan was genuinely protecting him, not an adversary. They trudged on for the better part of a day, the vast crimson mass of Qisha Cliff now visible to the naked eye. However, Yan Nanqing's body temperature began to rise alarmingly, his wound worsening, and he slipped into a semi-conscious state, muttering incoherently about water. Qingwan touched his forehead, the heat alarming to her. The venom and injury were exacerbating under the intense heat.
Hey, Anan.
Wake up, she urged, her heart racing. They could not continue. She had to find an antidote immediately, or he would not survive to reach the cliff's summit. Recalling the scorpion heart herb and black sand vine he had mentioned the previous night, she knew that places where these poisonous plants grew often harbored companion plants that countered their effects, a natural balance of the earth. She strained to drag Yan Nanqing to a shaded rock and laid him down. Hold on, I will look for something nearby to alleviate the poison. With that, she sprang to her feet and began to search diligently. Her sharp gaze swept over each desert plant, distinguishing them by their shapes, colors, and scents. Her efforts bore fruit. Behind a cluster of withered camel thorn, she discovered several small plants covered in fine spines. Thorny holly, Qingwan exclaimed softly, her heart leaping with joy. This common antidote, while not fully capable of neutralizing Yama powder, was sufficient to suppress the toxicity and alleviate the high fever, buying them more time. She quickly gathered several leaves and rushed back to Yan Nanqing's side, crushing the herbs and mixing them with clean water, carefully administering the concoction to him. After completing this task, she was nearly exhausted, leaning against the rock as she watched Yan Nanqing, still frowning in unconsciousness, her emotions tangled. Saving him had initially been an act of compassion, yet now, it seemed she could not easily withdraw from this situation. After resting for several hours, Yan Nanqing's fever gradually subsided, and his consciousness slowly returned. When he opened his eyes, the fading light of dusk painted the sky with a yellow hue, and the dust stirred slightly. Qingwan was beside him, organizing their belongings. Upon noticing he had awakened, she turned to him. You're awake?
Can you walk?
Yan Nanqing struggled to prop himself up on his elbows, every bone in his body aching as though they were dislocated, and his throat felt parched. How long was I unconscious? Not long, just most of the day. She handed him a water pouch, watching as he struggled to accept it, a complex look flickering in her eyes. He took a sip, his voice hoarse. Thank you. I've troubled you. Before he could finish, he succumbed to a fit of coughs. He had not anticipated that this man named Yan would not abandon him and flee alone. Qingwan merely shook her head lightly, her tone still calm. It's nothing. Since our paths coincide, it is only right to lend a hand. Yan Nanqing regarded her silently, his gaze seeming to penetrate her serene expression, seeking the truth beneath. She was too composed, too unfazed for an ordinary person. Had she not rescued him and refrained from taking advantage of his unconsciousness, he might have suspected her of being an assassin sent by someone else. An inexplicable sense of trust in her began to grow. After a moment, he gritted his teeth, attempting to rise, but dizziness overcame him, and he staggered. Qingwan promptly extended her hand to steady his arm. Be careful. Your condition is still precarious, she continued, her eyes scanning his still pale face. We must reach the cliff top as soon as possible to find the antidote. Yan Nanqing took a deep breath, suppressing his discomfort, and nodded. I have an idea of the way. If we continue forward, we should arrive by tomorrow. Qingwan gazed towards the towering mountain in the distance, appearing deceptively close while truly being far away. Yan Nanqing followed her gaze and nodded in agreement. They exchanged no further words. Stepping once more into the vast expanse of crimson sands. Chapter 91. It is her. In the Northern Territories, within the commander's tent, the dim yellow candlelight illuminated a thin letter in Xiao Tingyuan's hands. He lowered his gaze, reading intently, and the sharpness of his brow softened, a slight smile gracing his lips. The letter contained only a few terse sentences, yet the emotions woven within were unmistakable, and he savored them deeply. Tasting the warmth of affection, Fei stood beside him, holding her breath, her eyes discreetly glancing at her master's rare, gentle profile, inwardly relieved. She had worried that the princess would write too little, but it seemed that as long as it was the princess's letter, it could soothe the commander's ire more effectively than any victory report. Prepare ink. Xiao Tingyuan suddenly spoke, his voice remaining low. I wish to reply. Yes, yes. Fei Yu hurriedly responded, stepping forward to fetch the precious pine resin ink, mixing it with a bit of water and slowly grinding it. The fragrance of the ink wafted softly through the tent. Xiao Tingyuan dipped the brush in the ink, hesitating for a moment before writing. He stared at the blank sheet, as if envisioning the graceful figure 1,000 miles away. As he began to write, he found himself overwhelmed with countless words trapped in his throat, unsure of how to begin. The biting winds at the frontier, the bright moon over the snow-capped mountains, the drills on the training grounds, even the flickering candlelight at his desk, all the trivial details he wished to share with her. He wrote for 2 hours. The candlelight flickered, and only when his wrist began to ache did he finally set down the brush. Looking at the thick stack of paper filled with his scrawl, he was taken aback. When had he become such a loquacious writer? Then he felt a sense of relief. After all, this was a letter to family, and it was only natural to write at length. Fei Yu silently gasped. If the prince were to discover that the princess was right under his nose, this letter would lose its charm. Xiao Tingyuan carefully folded the letter, placing it into an envelope and sealing it with wax, his movements meticulous. Once he completed these tasks, he casually inquired, "Has a Yan's journey gone smoothly?" Fei Yu immediately bowed in response, reporting to the prince, "All is well. The scouts reported yesterday that a Yan has ventured deep into the northwestern desert, and it is estimated that she will procure the medicinal herbs within the next few days and return shortly." Xiao Tingyuan lightly tapped his fingers on the table, nodding slightly. "Good, very good." In the northwestern desert, not having traveled far, a dark falcon circled above like a phantom, its sharp gaze fixated on the 2 figures below. "Alas, they have caught up to us." Yan Nancheng raised his gaze, his pupils narrowing. Those were specially trained hawks, adept at tracking, relentless in their pursuit. Before he could finish his thought, the thunderous sound of hooves echoed ominously from all directions. Amidst the swirling yellow sand, dozens of black-clad assassins encircled them once more, exuding an air of lethal intent. "I and my brother," Yan Nancheng turned his head, "they seek me. With your skills, you still have time to flee." The wound on his shoulder continued to seep dark blood, his complexion pale, yet his gaze remained sharp. Qingwan cast a glance at the encroaching formation, her tone calm and devoid of emotion. "No need for your words. If we are to be defeated, I shall depart on my own terms."
Do not blame me then.
She spoke no falsehood. Her desire to save him stemmed from a fleeting impulse of compassion. She would not sacrifice her life for a man from an enemy nation, for she bore a far more significant mission. Upon hearing this, a barely perceptible smile curved at the corners of Yan Nancheng's lips. He understood that she had already shown great mercy by coming this far. How could he blame her?
Kill.
"Leave none alive," the leader of the black-clad men bellowed, and the warhorses neighed as blades sliced through the air. Instantly, the clash of swords and daggers wove a deadly web. Despite his grievous injuries, Yan Nancheng's swordsmanship remained fierce and precise, each strike infused with a desperate valor. However, the intensity of his movements accelerated the spread of the poison coursing through his veins, his lips turning a deep hue of blue at an alarming rate. The black-clad assailants were numerous, their coordination impeccable, each a trained assassin. Qingwan wielded her sword to parry, her movements agile, yet she found herself ensnared, unable to break free. In that moment, her peripheral vision caught a glint of cold steel silently aimed at Yan Nancheng's back. "Be careful." Almost instinctively, she hurled her sword. With a soft thud, the blade pierced the chest of the assailant. However, at the moment she threw her sword, another curved dagger was upon her. She barely had time to dodge as the icy blade grazed her left arm, blood instantly soaking her sleeve. Yan Nancheng turned back upon hearing the sound, witnessing the gruesome wound on her arm and the black-clad man pinned to the ground by her thrown sword. A pang of concern gripped his heart. "Thank you. Are you all right?" Qingwan let out a muffled groan, kicking away the approaching enemy, cold sweat beading on her forehead from the pain. "I'm fine, just careless." Just then, a cloud of dust billowed on the horizon, the sound of thunderous hooves drawing nearer. "Protect the master. Kill, without mercy." Yan Nancheng's deputy, Zhisun, surged forward, leading the elite cavalry like a spear thrust into the fray. The tide of battle shifted in an instant. Seeing the situation turn against them, the black-clad men promptly bit down on their poison pouches, succumbing to death in an instant. "Check for survivors," Zhisun commanded sharply, then hurried to kneel before Yan Nancheng, his voice laden with guilt and alarm. "Master, I have arrived late. You are poisoned." He gazed with terror at Yan Nancheng's darkened lips and unsteady stance. "No harm done." Yan Nancheng waved his hand dismissively, his tone calm. His gaze passed over Jisun and fell upon Qingwan, who was tending to her wounds alone. He stepped forward, his voice unconsciously softening. I am grateful for your assistance earlier. Your wound,
Qingwan.
tearing a strip from her garment to hastily bandage herself, did not lift her head. It's a trivial matter. No need to concern yourself. The injury was far from superficial. Flesh torn and blood gushing, making her self-treatment exceedingly arduous. Allow me. Without thinking, Yan Nancheng stepped closer. As the words left his mouth, he was momentarily taken aback. When had he become so proactive? An absurd thought flashed through his mind. Could it be that he was infatuated? No, that was impossible. No need. Qingwan's tone turned icy, stepping back to distance herself from him, instinctively turning away. In her movement, the rolled-up sleeve revealed an arm as pale as jade, unmistakably feminine. The gaping wound upon it was all the more shocking. Though it was merely a fleeting glance, it struck Yan Nancheng as if struck by lightning, leaving him frozen in place. That delicate arm, was it a woman's? Coupled with that familiar, stubborn yet cold gaze. The figure of a woman surged into his consciousness. It was her. It was indeed her. Master, who is she? Deputy Jisun approached, keenly sensing his master's momentary lapse and the fixation in his gaze. He looked at Qingwan, who was tending to her wounds alone, and, relying on his military intuition, sensed that this person possessed an enigmatic prowess and an extraordinary background. Yan Nancheng suddenly regained his composure, swallowing hard, his voice slightly hoarse. She is my savior. He stood silently, his heart a tumult of emotions. Reason told him she was the woman of the Shura King, and this was the perfect opportunity to capture her. Yet, why did he feel no trace of murderous intent? Instead, he found himself anticipating their next encounter. Chapter 92. Red Sandcliff. Qingwan tied off a strip of cloth and approached Yan Nancheng. And, since your people have arrived, I shall take my leave.
Farewell.
She clasped her fists and turned to depart.
Wait.
An inexplicable tightness gripped Yan Nancheng's heart as he stepped forward without a second thought, his tall frame blocking her path. The movement tugged painfully at his shoulder wound, sending a wave of agony mixed with numbness through him. Yet his gaze remained fixed upon her. I and my brother, he spoke urgently, his voice slightly husky. You have saved my life multiple times. And now you bear a wound for my sake. If I were to let you depart alone with injuries, would I not be lower than a beast? If I do not repay this kindness, it shall be a lifelong shame for me. He paused, his gaze falling upon her bleeding left arm, his tone involuntarily softening. Look at this harsh desert, where the winds and sands cut like knives. Should the wound become infected, it could fester and rot. I have brought top-quality healing ointment with me, which would greatly benefit your recovery. Even if you wish to leave, you should at least wait until your wound is properly treated. Otherwise, if it worsens, what then? This lengthy declaration spilled forth, even surprising him. When had he become so loquacious? And why did he feel such a strong urge to retain her? Not waiting for Qingwan's response, he turned to his deputy, Jisun. At your service. Jisun immediately replied. Fetch my jade skin ointment. Yan Nancheng commanded, referring to his specialized healing remedy. Jisun's eyes widened in evident astonishment, but that surprise was quickly replaced by absolute obedience. He promptly retrieved a delicate jade vial from his bosom and presented it with both hands. Yan Nancheng took it and handed it directly to Qingwan. A mere scratch, not worth your concern. Qingwan frowned slightly, declining, I can handle it myself. She instinctively took a half-step back, maintaining her distance. Seeing her ejection, Yan Nancheng appeared slightly displeased, stepping forward. Is it that my sincerity is lacking? Or, do you not trust me, Anan? This desert is a ravenous beast. Having one more friend is better than having one more enemy. I swear by my life that you will be safe among my ranks. As he spoke, his gaze sharpened as he glanced at Jisun. Although Jisun harbored doubts, his loyalty to his master compelled him to step forward, solemnly clasping his fists at Qingwan, esteemed one. You saved our master. Thus you are our benefactor. Allowing you to leave with injuries would bring us shame before our master. Let us escort you for a while. It is but a small token of our gratitude. Qingwan paused for a moment, her gaze sweeping over Yan Nancheng's pale yet resolute face, then over the surrounding cavalry, injured yet sharp-eyed. Blending into this trained troop would indeed greatly lessen the chances of scrutiny and enhance her safety. Weighing the pros and cons, she ultimately relented, her voice still hoarse and cold. Then, thank you. That is, as it should be. A sudden sense of relief washed over Yan Nancheng, and without thinking, he blurted out, your wound is quite deep. It would be difficult for you to tend to it alone. Allow me to apply the medicine again. The moment the words left his mouth, both of them were taken aback. No need. I can do it myself. She swiftly turned around, seeking refuge behind a distant sand dune, leaving him with a guarded silhouette as she tended to her wounds in solitude. Yan Nancheng observed her wary figure, his gaze deepening with concern, ultimately deciding against pressing the matter further. He understood her desire to conceal her identity. Master. Jisun's anxious voice disrupted his thoughts as he presented a water pouch and a porcelain vial. The toxin is spreading rapidly. Your lips have already turned black. Please take these antidote pills to suppress it. While they may not fully resolve the issue, they can delay its effects. It was only at that moment that Yan Nancheng jolted back to reality, a wave of intense dizziness crashing over him. The pain and numbness from the wound on his shoulder nearly robbing him of his balance. It dawned on him, rather belatedly, that his injuries were far more severe than those of Qingwan. Until this point, his entire focus had been on the person who had rejected him. Oblivious to his own suffering, accepting the medicine and water, he tilted his head back to swallow them down. Master, I have dispatched a swift steed to find a renowned physician for the antidote. Rest assured, I will risk everything to procure it for you. Yan Nancheng nodded slightly. Yet his gaze involuntarily drifted back to that slender figure in the distance. Master, shall I assist you in reapplying the medicine to your wound? Jisun retrieved a bottle of high-quality wound ointment from his bosom. He nodded in agreement, not declining the offer. In a matter of moments, the wound was redressed, and a glint of ruthless coldness flickered in Yan Nancheng's eyes as he stated softly, "My dear third royal uncle, since he is so restless." He paused. Then he need not remain any longer. Understood. I shall ensure he pays dearly for daring to poison you. Jisun's eyes flashed with ferocity as he clasped his fists in obedience. Yan Nancheng wearily waved his hand, and Jisun ceased further words, bowing respectfully before quietly withdrawing. Jisun was remarkably efficient, quickly organizing everything. The injured were given rudimentary bandaging and settled, while the bodies of the black-clad assailants were hastily buried to avoid attracting sand wolves. The elite cavalry lined up once more, ready to set forth. Master, everything is in order. We may depart, Jisun reported in a low voice, his gaze scanning Yan Nancheng's increasingly darkened lips with concern. Yan Nancheng responded,
his voice somewhat weak.
To be on the safe side, he needed to personally venture to Qisha Cliff in search of the Qiang fruit. Once the fruit was plucked, it needed to be consumed swiftly, otherwise, its efficacy would be lost. His gaze unconsciously returned to the sand dune. At this moment, Qingwan had rebandaged her wounds and was standing up, brushing the dust from her robe. Bring a gentle horse for Brother Ian, Yan Nancheng instructed softly. Yes. Jisun personally selected the most docile brown steed and led it before Qingwan, handing her the reins and speaking in a tone more gentle than before. Benefactor, please ride this one. Qingwan glanced at him and nodded slightly. Thank you. She deftly mounted the horse, her movements fluid, showing no sign of the injury on her left arm. Giddy up. The troop continued their journey, and after riding for half a day, they would reach Qisha Cliff. Half a day later, as the sun dipped toward the west, a massive and menacing dark red mountain gradually came into view, resembling a colossal beast sprawled across the horizon. That was Qisha Cliff. As the troop approached, the cliff's terrifying visage became increasingly clear. The cliff face was as steep as if carved by a knife, displaying a burning crimson hue that starkly contrasted with the surrounding desolate yellow desert. Upon the red cliffs, distant traces of green life could be spotted. Clusters of drought-resistant sandthorn and camelthorn were firmly rooted in the crevices of the rocks, their leaves having evolved into needle-like forms to minimize water loss. In sheltered depressions or on rocky ridges, several uniquely shaped cacti could even be seen. Beneath the cliff, in the gaps of the rubble, occasional patches of dry yet still vibrant low shrubs were visible. Qingwan reined in her horse, gazing up at the towering crimson cliffs, her sharp eyes scanning the sparse green patches. Spotting the cheat-in grass she sought, her heart leaped with joy. Taking a deep breath, she spoke in a firm voice. We have arrived. Chapter 93, A Dead Horse as a Living Doctor. Jisun pulled on the reins, bringing the steed to a halt beside Yan Nancheng. He leaned slightly forward, excitement evident in his voice. Master, I just received a message via carrier pigeon. He produced a small bamboo tube from his robe. The shaman has dispatched someone to deliver the heart-protecting pill day and night. The letter states that this medicine, combined with the Qiang fruit, will harmonize yin and yang, ensuring your life is safeguarded and completely purging the toxins. After a brief pause, he added more confidently, it will arrive within a day at the latest.
Hmm.
Yan Nansheng nodded slightly, the tension in his jaw appearing to ease a fraction. Prolonged exposure to the toxin and relentless travel had left his lips darkened and his complexion pale, yet this news undoubtedly served as a powerful tonic for his spirit. Then we shall wait another day. Instruct the men to find a secure place to rest nearby. Yes. Jasun clasped his fists in acknowledgement, hope illuminating his expression as he turned swiftly to command the others. Yan Nansheng then turned to the ever-silent Yi Qingwan beside him, speaking gently, Ian, the sky is darkening. Let us rest well here tonight. He gazed at her profile, recalling the figure he had seen in the side hall of the palace. Yi Qingwan, indeed weary, nodded softly. All right. She lifted her gaze, meeting his increasingly pale and fatigued face, and blurted out, your poison. Before she could finish, Yan Nansheng suppressed a cough, meeting her concerned gaze with a faint smile that barely formed at the corners of his mouth. It's nothing. Now that I have found a solution, I will not perish. The troop quickly located a large wind-sheltered rock face where the weary horsemen gathered. The soldiers dismounted orderly, first providing their anxious steeds with some fresh water and grain before attending to their own needs with the cold, hard flatbread from their water pouches. There was little food available, and Yi Qingwan cautiously consumed her own provisions of dried rations and water. Out in the wild, she remained ever vigilant, trusting no one. After a simple meal, the group settled in clusters on the still warm sands, donning their clothes as they quickly succumbed to heavy slumber. The horses were tethered together at the perimeter, forming a living barrier. Several sentries had already dispersed silently, armed and patrolling at key points around the perimeter. Jasun thoughtfully built a small fire beside Yan Nansheng, the dry brush crackling and the flickering flames offering warmth while dispelling a small portion of the darkness. Yan Nansheng wrapped himself tightly in the thick cloak Jasun had provided and drifted into a deep sleep. Yi Qingwan chose a spot close to the corner of the rock wall, leaning against a rough boulder. She cautiously surveyed her surroundings for a moment, confirming temporary safety before slowly closing her eyes. Yet even in slumber, she remained alert, her hand unconsciously resting on the hilt of the dagger at her waist. The following day, as dawn barely broke, Yi Qingwan was startled awake by a cacophony of noise. She opened her eyes abruptly, her long-standing vigilance snapping her into full awareness. Before her lay a group of people gathered at the spot where Yan Nansheng had rested the previous night, the atmosphere tense and grave. Her heart sank as she quickly rose and hurried forward, parting the crowd, only to find Yan Nansheng lying on the ground, tightly wrapped in his cloak, seemingly trembling uncontrollably. Jasun knelt beside him, carefully applying a damp cloth to his forehead. Yan Nansheng's face no longer bore the pallor of illness. Instead, it was flushed with an unnatural redness, his brows furrowed tightly, as if he had lost consciousness. What is wrong with him? She inquired. Jasun looked up. Anxiety etched across his features. Rising, he clasped his fists towards Yi Qingwan, his voice hoarse, to answer the benefactor, Master. He began to develop a high fever in the middle of the night, and it has escalated rapidly. He has now fallen into a coma. The prolonged toxin exposure, coupled with relentless exertion, has rendered his condition extremely dire. Yi Qingwan's brows knitted slightly as she surveyed Yan Nansheng's anguished expression before turning her gaze towards Jasun. Did we not ascertain yesterday that the antidote was within reach? Jasun's tone grew increasingly grave. The heart-protecting pill will not arrive until noon at the earliest. But given the current state of our master, we may not have that long. The cliffside where the Qiang fruit grows has been heavily guarded, waiting only for the arrival of the heart-protecting pill to be harvested and consumed. However, he paused, his fists unconsciously clenching. Time, what we lack most is time. If we recklessly consume the Qiang fruit, our master may not withstand it. Then we cannot afford to wait idly. Yi Qingwan declared decisively. We must find other medicinal herbs to reduce his fever, and, by some time, a trace of bitterness flickered across Jasun's face. I have sent brothers knowledgeable in herbal medicine to search nearby for any fever-reducing and anti-inflammatory herbs. Let us hope that our master can endure until then. Time slipped away, second by second. Yi Qingwan stood silently by, observing. Yan Nansheng, lying on the ground, seemed to be caught in a tempest of extremes. Alternating between chilling shivers and the scalding heat of a high fever, his delirious murmurs growing more indistinct. Jasun, watching his master's increasingly flushed face and faint breath, felt an acute sense of urgency. He suddenly drew a dagger from his waist and shouted at his subordinate, "Hold him down." Ancient wisdom states that bloodletting can release heat and detoxify. We cannot wait any longer. His subordinate hesitated at first, but prepared to carry out the command. Stop. Do you wish to kill him instantly? Yi Qingwan stepped in front of Yan Nanqing, her gaze sharp as a blade, piercing straight at Jisun. Jisun faltered. Urgency in his voice. Benefactor. This is the only method we have at present. Shall we just watch as our master burns to death?
Ye Qingwan countered firmly.
At this moment, his blood is already thin, his vital energy greatly depleted. Your knife will not release heat or toxins. It will drain the last remnants of his life force. If the fever does not subside, he will perish. She pointed to Yan Nanqing's pale lips and faint pulse. The true source of the fever lies in the poison within, not merely in an excess of blood. Our immediate priority is to protect his heart meridian and sustain a flicker of life while we await the antidote, not to heap misfortune upon misfortune. Jisun was momentarily subdued by her fervor and medical reasoning, his hand trembling around the dagger before it finally fell limply to his side. He then asked, "What shall we do now?" Yi Qingwan took a deep breath. "Let me try," she instructed. "Help me fetch some clean water and find some clean linen." Jisun looked up at her in astonishment. Jisun was momentarily speechless. The high fever has already reached the heart meridian. Further physical cooling will have little effect. Yi Qingwan did not lift her gaze, her voice cold and resolute. The toxins within him are raging, intermingled with external evils. We must use golden needles to pierce the heat and guide out the poison, forcibly releasing a portion of the fire energy, which may buy us half a day's time. As she spoke, she retrieved an ancient leather pouch from her bosom. Upon unfolding it, a row of long and short gleaming golden needles was revealed. Jisun's pupils constricted. "Is that acupuncture?"
Ye Qingwan nodded.
"This is an acupuncture technique taught to me by my grandfather. I usually use these as hidden weapons. This is my first time employing them to save a life. We can only treat him as a dying horse being treated as a living one. Support him on his side and loosen his clothing to expose his back," she instructed Jisun. With no time for hesitation, Jisun and another subordinate carefully propped up the unconscious Yan Nanqing, following her command to unfasten his blood-stained inner garments, revealing his sturdy back. The gruesome arrow wound had seen the dark toxins spreading even further. Yi Qingwan's fingertips glided over the row of golden needles, swiftly selecting 3 of varying lengths. She heated the needle tips over the firebrand handed to her by Jisun, her movements practiced. "Hold him still. No matter what happens, he must not move." Jisun nodded gravely, using all his strength to stabilize Yan Nanqing's body. The next moment, Yi Qingwan's gaze sharpened, her fingers steady as a rock, and with precision. She swiftly inserted the first needle into the Dazui acupoint at the back of his neck. A muffled groan of pain escaped Yan Nanqing's lips as his body instinctively tensed. Jisun's heart raced, and he quickly pressed down harder. Yi Qingwan did not hesitate, swiftly administering the second and third needles into the Shunju and Lingtai acupoints. These 3 points lie along the governing vessel, governing the body's yang energy, key to lowering the fever and restoring consciousness. Her technique was not merely about insertion. She deftly twisted and manipulated the needles with subtle movements, each slight adjustment eliciting more intense reactions from Yan Nanqing's body. His breathing grew labored, veins bulging on his forehead, and beads of sweat began to form before trickling down the sides of his face. All the soldiers surrounding them held their breath. Incredulity etched on their faces as they witnessed this miraculous yet harrowing scene. They had never seen such a method of healing, relying not on decoctions or blades, but merely on a few slender needles capable of invoking profound responses from the human body. A fine sheen of sweat also appeared on Yi Qingwan's forehead, yet her focus remained unwavering. She retrieved another needle, accurately piercing the Chuqi and Weiguan acupoints in his arm to further purge the excess yang heat. Throughout the entire process, she remained entirely absorbed, not daring to let her guard down for even a moment. After a considerable time, she finally paused her actions. After the passage of roughly a tea's worth of time, Yi Qingwan meticulously observed Yan Nanqing's complexion and breathing. To her relief, the terrifying flush that once dominated his face had indeed begun to fade, and although he still appeared pale and weak, his brow relaxed, and his previously rapid breathing had steadied. Only then did she carefully begin to withdraw the needles. Each needle that was removed seemed to draw forth a trace of scorching energy. When the last needle was extracted from the Dazui acupoint, a drop of dark-colored blood gradually seeped from the minute puncture. Yi Qingwan swiftly took clean linen dipped in fresh water to wipe away the sweat and that drop of black blood from his back. All done. She exhaled deeply. The high fever has been temporarily contained, and the crisis to his heart meridian has been alleviated. However, the toxins within him remain. This is merely a temporary measure. We must administer the antidote as soon as possible. Jisun hurriedly reached out to check their master's forehead, and indeed, The once scalding heat had subsided. He abruptly looked up at Qingwan, his eyes filled with astonishment and gratitude. Benefactor, you are truly miraculous. His excitement rendered him somewhat incoherent, ultimately manifesting as a deep bow. On behalf of my master, I thank you once more for saving his life.
Je Qingwan vavet her hand dismissively.
Carefully returning the golden needles back to her pouch, she gazed at Yan Nancheng, still unconscious but evidently stabilized, and spoke softly, "Take good care of him, and let there be no further mishaps. For now, all we can do is wait." At that moment, the subordinate who had been sent to seek medicine finally rushed back, panting and holding several spiny green plants. "Big brother, I found it. This cactus is said to clear heat and detoxify. Look." He cautiously offered the cactus. Qingwan's eyes brightened as she stepped forward to accept it. "Excellent. Quickly, remove the spines and crush it to extract the juice. This liquid can alleviate the high fever and slow the spread of the toxins, precisely what we require at this moment." The subordinate glanced towards Jasun, hesitant to act without permission. "What are you still hesitating for? Did you not hear the benefactor's instructions? Hurry." Jasun barked. Yes. I will take care of it right away." The subordinate did not dare to delay any further, and hurriedly retreated with a cactus in hand. Jasun turned to face Qingwan, a hint of embarrassment on his face. "My subordinates are foolish. I apologize for them causing you to witness such incompetence." "Not at all," Qingwan replied gently, raising her hand. "I need to gather some medicinal herbs nearby, so I leave this to you. Please, benefactor. Take your leave with caution." Jasun nodded, and Qingwan acknowledged him before heading towards the Qi Sha cliff. She lifted her gaze to the towering red cliff, her eyes immediately spotting their target nestled within the crevice of the precipice, the Qi Dan grass. Yet, she did not act immediately. To maintain a facade, she refrained from immediately harvesting the medicinal herb. Instead, she meticulously gathered various useful plants from the surroundings to create a diversion. Only after that did she seemingly nonchalantly scale the cliff, skillfully plucking the precious Qi grass and concealing it deep within her basket. Upon returning to the resting place, she noticed Yan Nancheng still in a faint, yet his complexion had regained some color, and his breathing had become considerably steadier. "How is he?" she inquired softly. "After taking the heart-protecting pill and the Qiang fruit, his pulse has stabilized significantly. With a day of rest, he should awaken," Jasun respectfully replied, his gaze inadvertently sweeping over her full basket of herbs. "You gathered so many medicinal ingredients?" He couldn't help but ask. "Indeed. These are the only useful herbs in the vicinity. I couldn't let the trip be in vain," Qingwan replied with a serene smile as she set down her burden. Jasun glanced at the basket and found it filled with ordinary herbs, lacking anything remarkable, and thus assumed she was merely an ordinary herbalist. "If you require any additional herbs, please do not hesitate to ask. I will certainly find a way to procure them for you," he pledged earnestly. Although a twinge of doubt lingered in his heart, he remembered her repeated acts of rescue with gratitude. "That is more than enough. Thank you, Brother Jasun." Qingwan graciously declined, though inwardly she contemplated that if she could obtain a passage permit, it would alleviate much trouble. However, this thought flitted away, and she naturally kept it to herself. "We plan to set off for Shilafeng town early tomorrow. If it is convenient for you, would you like to join us?" Jasun suggested. "Shilafeng town?" Qingwan's heart stirred. The Kalinzi army was stationed nearby. They must be heading to find the Kalinzi. She nodded promptly, perfectly aligned. "I shall depart with you tomorrow." This was undoubtedly a delightful turn of events. Traveling alongside Yan Nancheng and his companions would not only help her avoid scrutiny along the way, but also allow her to approach her target more smoothly, an ideal scenario. Wonderful. "Once the master awakens, he will surely reward you handsomely for your life-saving grace," Jasun beamed with delight. "A mere act of kindness, nothing to mention," Qingwan replied with a calm smile as she turned to organize her herbs. In the afternoon sun, Qingwan ascended the Qisha cliff once more, intending to gather more herbs. This time, she moved like a swallow, gracefully navigating the sheer cliffside, collecting the remaining Qidan grass. Below, Jasun watched in awe, feeling both envious and admiring of her extraordinary skills. Such prowess was beyond the reach of ordinary folk. He couldn't help but think of recruiting her. When she returned from her foraging, Jasun stepped forward and urged, "Ayen, with your remarkable abilities, if you are willing to serve my master, your monthly salary would far exceed that of a mere herbalist." Qingwan set down her basket and politely declined. "I appreciate your kind offer, Brother Jasun, but I am accustomed to my free-spirited ways and fear I would not adapt well to constraints." "What a pity," Jasun sighed. With your talents, a career in commerce would be a waste. Everyone has their own aspirations. Qingwan replied with a slight smile, choosing not to elaborate further. Yet Jasun was unwilling to relent. Should you ever change your mind, you may always seek me out. My offer stands forever. Thank you, she said, performing a respectful gesture, though her mind was preoccupied with her own plans. Chapter 95. Pursuit. The following morning, as the dawn light began to break, Yan Nancheng's eyelashes fluttered gently before he slowly opened his eyes. Qingwan was the first to notice his movement and swiftly approached to assist him in sitting up. How do you feel? She asked. He rubbed his temples, his voice still hoarse from slumber. Much better. How long was I unconscious? A full 2 days, she replied, handing him a water pouch and adding attentively, you have taken the antidote, and the toxins are beginning to clear. With a bit more rest, you will fully recover. At that moment, Jasun also noticed the commotion and hurried over. Master, you've finally awakened. His face radiated uncontainable joy. But is there any discomfort remaining? None. Yan Nancheng gently waved his hand. Although his complexion remained pale, his gaze had already regained its vigor. Jasun laughed heartily. I told you, the master is blessed. Prepare our gear. We shall depart shortly, Yan Nancheng commanded. His voice, though weak, still carried an undeniable authority. Yes. Jasun clasped his fists in acknowledgement and immediately turned to make arrangements. On the road, Yan Nancheng slowed his horse, riding alongside Qingwan. He turned his head, his gaze resting on the side of her face, which was dusted by the wind and sand, and spoke softly. Yan, I have heard everything. Thank you for saving me once again. Qingwan did not look back, her eyes fixed on the undulating hills ahead as she replied calmly. It was merely a trifling matter. There is no need to mention it again. After a brief silence, he continued, Yan, what are your plans moving forward? He asked knowingly, eager to hear her thoughts. Qingwan's lips curved into a relaxed smile as she replied, naturally, I intend to sell the herbs and return home. The word home pierced Yan Nancheng like a needle. He subtly tightened his grip on the reins, his knuckles whitening. Yes. She was about to return to the side of the Shura King. Though he longed to forcibly keep her by his side, whether through confinement or courteous treatment, he understood deep down that she would inevitably depart. No one could prevent that. The mere thought that the Shura King would allow her to venture into danger tightened his jaw. His gaze turning steely, he diverted his eyes to the distant horizon and casually asked, what do you think of the Kalinzi? The Kalinzi had recently risen to prominence, his reputation already echoing throughout Beiyan. Qingwan's eyes flickered momentarily, a hint of hesitation in her voice as she replied, the Kalinzi? It's not for us common folk to judge. I've heard he brings prosperity to Beiyan and wins battles, so he must be quite commendable. Hearing her response, a faint smile graced Yan Nancheng's lips. And how do you compare the Shura King to the Kalinzi? He pressed on, turning to cast her a hopeful glance, yearning to hear even a whisper of criticism toward the Shura King or a preference for the Kalinzi. Qingwan finally turned to face him, her brow furrowed slightly. Of course, why do you seem so strange today? She tilted her head, scrutinizing him. Their affairs are matters of those lofty figures in the clouds. What concern is it of a mere herbalist like me? Indeed, Yan Nancheng conceded, feeling somewhat stifled by her words, his gaze dimming. After a moment of silence, he broached the main topic. Will we meet again in the future? Perhaps, she replied nonchalantly, her gaze returning to the road ahead. Upon hearing this, his expression darkened completely, akin to the setting sun sinking behind distant mountains. If they were to meet again on the battlefield, weapons drawn, it would no longer be the brotherly camaraderie they shared now. If she were to discover that the person before her was the Kalinzi, she would undoubtedly fight with all her might, showing no mercy. And as the commander of the army, he must do the same. 3 days later, the walls of Shuafeng town finally came into view. Soldiers stood at the city gate, scrutinizing the passing pedestrians. Following their convoy, Yan Nancheng experienced a seamless journey, even avoiding inspection. Such are the benefits of connections. As the convoy entered the city, Qingwan nimbly dismounted, returning the reins before bowing to Yan Nancheng and Jasun. Anan, brother Jasun, since we have safely arrived in town, I must head to the market to find an apothecary to sell these herbs. Farewell. Yan Nancheng remained seated atop his horse, gazing deeply at her, a multitude of unspoken words caught in his throat, ultimately crystallizing into a simple farewell, until we meet again. Qingwan smiled serenely, shouldering the heavy basket of herbs, and within moments, she melded into the crowd, her figure quickly vanishing. Yan Nancheng's gaze lingered on the direction she had disappeared, his expression a tapestry of complex emotions. Master, Jasun stepped forward, puzzled, and whispered, "Why did you not keep her? She is a rare talent, skilled in medicine, and even more remarkable in agility. She cannot be retained." Yan Nansheng withdrew his gaze, his tone returning to the calm indifference befitting a military commander, though the fingers gripping the reins turned slightly pale. Jasun gazed at the bustling street corner, now devoid of the figure he sought, and sighed heavily. What a pity, truly a pity. Meanwhile, Qingwan did not head directly to the marketplace. Like a nimble fish, she weaved through the crowd, discreetly turning into several secluded alleys. Ensuring she was not being followed, she swiftly slipped into the inconspicuous courtyard of a tea-house. This was the rendezvous point arranged with Xiao. Xiao had been waiting there, and upon seeing her, he gave a barely perceptible nod and quickly handed over a somewhat worn cloth package, whispering, "My lady, everything you requested is inside. The travel documents and passes are prepared, and your identity is that of a merchant dealing in medicinal herbs. Additionally, the back door has been readied with a horse for you." Qingwan nodded slightly, expressing her gratitude. Xiao said no more, turning to lift a crate of goods like an ordinary attendant, seamlessly merging into the throng of the front shop. Qingwan opened the package to reveal a set of plain male merchant attire, a long cloth pouch for carrying herbs, and some necessary miscellaneous items and documents. She quickly found a corner to change, and before the murky reflection in the water jar, she altered her appearance with disguised materials, rendering her features more rugged and unremarkable. Soon, a weary-looking, common traveling merchant emerged. She swiftly packed the herbs into the cloth pouch, exited through the back door, and slung the pouch over the horse's back, leading the horse into the crowd. In no time, she successfully passed through the city gate.
Halt.
Not far away, a coarse and piercing shout rang out. Qingwan's heart sank, her footsteps coming to an abrupt stop. She slowly turned around, her face adopting the customary ingratiating expression of a traveling merchant. The one who had called out was none other than General Yanbian, assigned to patrol the vicinity, perched atop a tall warhorse. His sharp eyes locked onto her like a hawk. Yanbian raised his hand holding the reins, pointing to a nearby soldier. "You, check again and be thorough." He felt an unsettling familiarity about her silhouette. Her gait was too light and steady, unlike that of an ordinary small trader. "Yes, General." The soldier hurriedly approached Qingwan, re-examining the travel documents and passes with meticulous scrutiny, almost word by word. His assessing gaze swept over her now unremarkable face several times, and finally, he roughly inspected the pouch of herbs on her horse's back. After confirming everything was in order, the soldier returned to Yanbian, cupping his fist in salute. "General, the verification is complete. The documents are intact, and she is indeed a merchant of medicinal herbs heading to Daliang, with nothing but common herbs in the pouch." Yanbian's brows knitted in irritation as he waved his hand dismissively, turning his horse around and leading his men away. As the sound of hoofbeats faded behind her, Qingwan wasted no time, nimbly mounting her horse, shaking the reins, and galloping towards the border. "Something's not right. I have definitely seen that person before," Yanbian mused, his mind racing. After a moment, he finally realized it's her, that a Yuan. He abruptly turned to look back, only to see a nearly vanishing black on the distant horizon. In an instant, rage surged through Yanbian, feeling as if he had been mocked. He drew his blade with a thunderous roar. "Pursue! After her! Capture her!" Before his command could fully dissipate, he surged ahead, like an arrow released from a bow. Behind him, dozens of elite soldiers, jolted from their stupor, urged their horses forward with shouts, relentlessly pursuing the distant black. Chapter 96, The Rescue. The thunderous sound of hooves rolled over the wasteland like muffled thunder, causing the ground to tremble slightly. Qingwan turned abruptly, seeing a cloud of dust billowing behind her. A dark mass of cavalry was hot on her trail, with Yanbian at the forefront. Without a moment's thought, she struck her horse's flank with the whip, causing it to cry out in pain and accelerate. Lowering her body, she fixed her gaze ahead. 300 miles further lay the border of Daliang.
Halt.
"Fire the arrows." Yanbian's furious shout pierced through the wind and sand. At his command, the well-trained cavalry promptly drew their bows, aiming at the solitary figure racing ahead. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A cacophony of ominous sounds filled the air as a barrage of arrows rained down upon her. Qingwan glanced back, but not a trace of panic flickered in her eyes. With a swift flick of her wrist, she drew her sword, the blade ringing out with a clear sound. Tilting her body slightly on horseback, she deftly conjured a flurry of swordplay to guard against the impending threat.
Clang, clang, clang.
The storm of arrows was entirely deflected by her shimmering sword light, scattering harmlessly to the ground behind her, failing to inflict any harm. Seeing this, Yanbian's face turned ashen, veins pulsating at his temples. Fire again. Bring her down. He spat between clenched teeth. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The second wave of arrows, imbued with even greater ferocity, surged forth. Yet she narrowly evaded them with her incredible agility and swordsmanship. Thus, the chase continued, covering 100 miles, yet Yanbian's men could not even graze her horse's rear. This only fueled the blaze of anger within him. Meanwhile, at the border of Daliang, Fei Yu stood in her battle attire, poised with her blade, her gaze sharp as she periodically scanned the horizon. She had received urgent intelligence, aware that the princess was returning today, and had come personally to lead her elite troops in a welcoming. Suddenly, a rider, swift as an arrow, charged towards her from afar. The scout barely had time to steady his horse before dismounting and kneeling, urgently reporting, "General, it's bad. Lady Yuan is being pursued on her way back by the soldiers of Beiyan, and it seems General Yanbian is leading the charge." Fei Yu's pupils constricted, her demeanor turning icy. How far are they from here? Less than 200 miles. With a swift motion, Fei Yu drew her curved blade, its gleaming edge pointed skyward, and commanded fiercely, "Everyone mount up. We ride out to assist Yuan." "Yes." A chorus of voices rang out from the 100 elite cavalrymen behind her, shaking the very ground. In an instant, the sound of blades being drawn echoed throughout the air. Fei Yu surged ahead, like a flash of crimson lightning, leading the charge. The 100 or so riders followed closely, their heavy hooves once again shaking the earth, stirring up clouds of dust. Qingwan felt the wind howl by her ears, the heavy breaths of her steed growing labored, foam beginning to form at the corners of her mouth. After 300 miles of desperate flight, both horse and rider were nearing their limits. This horse, being an ordinary mount, was not built for such long-distance pursuits. Yet the sound of hooves behind her clung to her like a relentless shadow, and Yanbian's furious shouts occasionally reached her ears, urging her on like a death knell. Another wave of arrows struck, but their force was no longer as dense or potent as before. It seemed the pursuers were exhausting their ammunition. She swung her sword to parry, but in a moment of distraction, a cleverly angled cold arrow struck her horse's leg. The horse let out a cry and collapsed. "Damn it!" She kicked off the saddle and landed deftly, glancing back at her pursuers. Yanbian, noticing her sudden halt, erupted into a triumphant, sinister laughter. "She can't run now. After her, whoever captures her will be promoted 3 ranks and rewarded 1,000 taels, with the allure of hefty rewards driving them." The already weary Beiyan cavalry seemed invigorated, shouting as they spurred their horses on, closing the distance once more. At that moment, from beyond the horizon, behind a low ridge, a larger cloud of dust suddenly billowed up. It was not a sandstorm, but the unmistakable sign of a large cavalry force galloping at high speed. Following that, a dark red battle flag burst forth from behind the ridge, unfurling fiercely in the wind. It was the flag of Daliang. It was the Shura King.
Qingwan.
Hearing the sound of hooves, raised the corners of her mouth in a smile. Fei Yu had arrived. A Yuan. The roar of Fei Yu pierced through the distance of several miles, resonating clearly in Qingwan's ears. Behind her, Yanbian also spotted the flag and the surging cavalry of the Liang kingdom, his expression changing drastically. He had never anticipated that the enemy's reinforcements would dare to venture this deep and arrive with such swiftness. "General, it is the elite under the command of the King of the North. More than 100 of them." The deputy commander shouted urgently, his voice laced with panic. With the prospect of victory so close at hand, Yanbian was unwilling to concede. A frenzied determination flickered in his eyes. "Ignore them. Charge forward. Capture that person first." The deputy commander, gritting his teeth, barked orders. The cavalry surged forth, encircling Qingwan, intent on seizing her first. Qingwan quickly engaged them in combat. Against these foes, she found herself more than capable. Good courage.
Charge.
Fei Yu caught sight of this scene from a distance, furiously urging his horse onward, increasing his speed. As Fei Yu's forces drew nearer, Yanbian and his men were still unable to subdue Qingwan. "General, we must retreat. They are almost upon us," the deputy urged anxiously. Before he could finish, Fei Yu's forces had entered range, and all the knights simultaneously drew their powerful bows, their icy arrows aimed at the northern Yan cavalry.
Fall back.
Yanbian was compelled to order a retreat, maintaining distance.
Halt.
Form ranks. In a matter of moments, Fei Yu's elite cavalry surged forth, positioning themselves before Qingwan. their arrows trained on the northern Yan troops. A terrifying aura of impending slaughter enveloped the desolate plain. Feiyu coldly regarded Yanbian, his voice booming across the battlefield. Northern Yan dogs. You pursue us to this point. Do you wish to engage in battle now? Yanbian's complexion darkened. They were outnumbered. And Northern Yan had retreated 500 miles, leaving them without reinforcements. Glancing at the menacing arrow formation of the enemy, and then at a Yuan, who was now shielded by the Liang forces, he realized that capturing her today was utterly impossible. Clenching his fists tightly, he finally managed to utter a single word through gritted teeth. Retreat. The Northern Yan cavalry withdrew like a receding tide, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Watching them depart, Feiyu slowly sheathed his sword. He nimbly dismounted and rushed to Yi Qingwan's horse, exclaiming with excitement, "Your Highness." He quickly corrected himself, "Ah Yuan, you have finally returned." Heaven knows the pressure he had endured these past few days. Now, he could finally breathe easy. Yes, it went relatively smoothly, she replied with a smile. In the next moment, Feiyu noticed the wound on her arm, his expression turning to one of alarm. You are injured? It's nothing. Just a flesh wound, nothing to the tendons or bones. Yi Qingwan reassured him, lightly moving her shoulder to indicate it was not serious. Let us return.
Right.
Let us head back. Feiyu nodded emphatically. The most fortunate thing was that she had returned safely, and his anxious heart finally found peace. Chapter 97. Please do not be angry, all right? Outside the Northern Army camp, Yuan Wei paced back and forth with his hands clasped behind his back, occasionally glancing into the distance. Having heard that Feiyu was to escort Ah Yuan back today, he had arrived early to wait. The sound of galloping hooves approached, and on the horizon, a group of riders gradually came into view, with a Yuan leading the way. Hey! A Yuan did not disappoint. Yuan Wei grinned widely, revealing a full set of white teeth. As the procession reached the camp gate, Yi Qingwan elegantly dismounted. She retrieved a cloth pouch from her bosom and handed it to Feiyu. I have brought back the medicinal herbs. Hurry and give them to the divine physician for preparation. Feiyu solemnly accepted it, nodding. I shall go at once. He turned and hastened towards the infirmary. Only then did Yuan Wei approach, giving Yi Qingwan's shoulder a hearty pat. Well done, lass. I knew I had not misjudged you. You have achieved another merit. Before she could respond, he enthusiastically draped an arm around her shoulder. Come, come. I will take you to meet the King of the North. You must receive a reward for this.
Ouch.
Yuan Wei's hand inadvertently brushed against her wounded arm, causing Yi Qingwan to gasp in pain. Are you injured? Yuan Wei immediately sobered, reaching out to inspect her wound. It's nothing. Yi Qingwan calmly stepped back a half pace, moving her arm slightly. See?
Iemme perfectly fine.
Yuan Wei scrutinized her for a moment before breaking into a smile. That's good. We cannot delay in going into battle. Ha ha ha. His hearty laughter echoed through the camp. At that moment, two figures hurriedly approached from the direction of the kitchen. Tainyo dashed in front of Yi Qingwan, delivering a hearty thump on her left shoulder. Ah Yuan, you've finally returned. We were so worried.
Ouch.
Yi Qingwan stumbled slightly from his unexpected enthusiasm. Tainyo's eyes reddened, his voice choked with emotion. The Northern Yan was so perilous, we all thought. His words trailed off. A Shui chimed in from the side. Yes. It was a matter of life and death. We had prepared for the worst. Bah. Yuan Wei interrupted, exasperated. What kind of ill-fated talk is that? Ah Yuan is blessed. She has divine protection. Tainyo wiped his face with his sleeve and produced 2 eggs from his pocket, presenting them to Yi Qingwan. You've lost weight. I saved these for you this morning to help replenish your strength. Yes, these are the 2 biggest eggs. A Shui quickly added. Yuan Wei, feeling a twinge of envy, remarked. Hey, you two are being too biased. Next time, be sure to save one for me too. Yi Qingwan felt warmth in her heart as she accepted the still warm eggs. Thank you, Brother Tainyo. Thank you, Brother A Shui. Feiyu has already instructed the kitchen to keep meals ready for you. They are still warm, Tainyo said, pulling her towards the kitchen. Come, let us eat first.
All right.
Yi Qingwan thought it best to wait until her injury healed before meeting the prince, to spare him further worry, and turned to Yuan Wei, saying, I'll visit the prince after a few days. Fine. Yuan Wei responded, though somewhat puzzled. It's strange. Everyone else is eager to achieve merit. Yet you are not in a hurry at all. Inside the command tent, the candles burned brightly. Xiao Tingyuan was reviewing military reports at his desk when Feiyu bowed and reported, Your Highness, a Yuan has safely returned with the medicinal herbs. The epidemic is under control. Xiao Tingyuan did not lift his head. Is she unscathed? Yes, fine. Just a minor injury to her arm. It did not affect her tendons or bones. She will recover in due time. Xiao Tingyuan finally raised his head, his gaze piercing. You seem quite concerned for her. Where is she now? She is resting after having dinner. She should be settling down now. Feiyu felt beads of sweat forming on his forehead. What are you so anxious about? Xiao Tingyuan raised an eyebrow slightly. Let her rest well. Bring her to see me tomorrow. She is a talent that should be promoted. Tomorrow? Feiyu exclaimed in surprise. Xiao Tingyuan's expression darkened. What? Are you afraid her military achievements might surpass yours? And no. It's just that tomorrow. I take my leave. Feiyu felt as if he had been granted a reprieve and hurriedly exited the tent. He needed to relay this news to the princess and deliver the letters from the prince to her. Inside Yuan's tent, Feiyu retrieved a thick stack of envelopes from his bosom. Princess, here. These are the letters the prince has written to you over the past few days.
So many?
Qingwan received the letters, slightly taken aback. Feiyu offered a rueful smile. The prince writes every night. However, princess, you may not be able to keep it hidden. The prince wishes to see you tomorrow. He says he wants to promote you. He shook his head in resignation, realizing that truly exceptional individuals cannot remain concealed. Tomorrow? Qingwan's heart leapt. Although it felt a bit too sudden, the anticipation of soon meeting the one she longed for surged within her. I understand. Then I shall take my leave. After sending Feiyu off, Qingwan sat at her desk, carefully unsealing each letter. By candlelight, her fingers gently traced the ink, comprehending the concern and profound affection woven within the words. Taking a deep breath, a gentle smile unconsciously graced her lips. He truly had not changed at all. In that moment, all the hardships and dangers were worthwhile. How could she not feel the same, constantly yearning for him? The following morning, Qingwan made her way directly to the commander's tent.
Halt.
No unauthorized personnel may enter. A guard brandished his spear to block her path. Yuan, seek an audience with the prince. I kindly request that you convey my message. Her voice was clear and composed. After a brief moment, the guard entered the tent. Emerging shortly thereafter, the prince bids you enter. Xiao Tingyuan stood pensively before a sand table, deeply engrossed in thought, and did not lift his head upon hearing her footsteps. However, Feiyu, standing nearby, was drenched in cold sweat and hurriedly declared, Your Highness, I must tend to the horses. Before he could finish, he dashed out of the tent. Xiao Tingyuan found his behavior rather peculiar, wondering why he was so eager to tend to horses, but he dismissed it and let him go. Just then, Qingwan lifted the curtain and entered. The moment their eyes met, the air around them became palpably still. The command baton in Xiao Tingyuan's hand fell with a sharp thud onto the sand table. Those eyes, though weathered by time and adorned in different attire, he recognized instantly. This was no mere Yuan. This was the beloved princess he had yearned for day and night. Qingwan offered a gentle smile, her eyes shimmering like stars. Yet, Xiao Tingyuan's countenance darkened in an instant, his heart a tumult of emotions, joy, shock, fear, and guilt. He was at a loss, unsure whether to rejoice or lament. He had allowed her to venture into the treacherous North Yen alone, utterly unaware. The name Feiyu almost escaped his lips like a bitter confession. It is not his fault. I compelled him to keep it from you, Qingwan hastily interjected. Xiao Tingyuan's expression remained stoic, though a storm of complex feelings churned beneath. What nonsense! You dared to conceal such a perilous endeavor from me. What if his words caught in his throat? Unable to continue, Qingwan gently wrapped her arms around his waist, her voice soft and soothing. There was no what if. Am I not here, safe and sound? She lifted her gaze to meet his eyes. Please do not be angry. His gaze finally fell upon her injured arm, and all his anger transformed into profound concern. Your injury, let me see. Chapter 98. Tending to the horses. Xiao Tingyuan cautiously rolled up her sleeve, his fingers hesitating as they brushed against the bandages on her arm. As he peeled back a corner of the rough cloth and beheld the grotesque wound, his breath quickened, pain flickering in his eyes. Is this what you call fine? He thought bitterly, filled with regret. If only I had known it was you. If you had known, would you have allowed me to go?
Qingwan Ganti interrupted.
She gazed into his profound eyes and spoke softly. Yuan, I am not merely a fragile canary to be sheltered under your wing. I am a sturdy tree capable of standing beside you, sharing your burdens and safeguarding the lands you wish to protect. Xiao Tingyuan stared at her, captivated by the clarity and resilience in her eyes. Have you changed your dressings? He inquired with concern. I took care of it first thing this morning. There is no need for worry. He sighed deeply, enveloping her in his embrace. It is my fault for being oblivious to your dangers. No. Yi Qingwan gently shook her head within his warm and steady embrace. You simply trust every warrior under your command, including Yuan. And I have proven myself, have I not? The tent fell into a tranquil silence as he longed to simply hold her and relish the moment. After a prolonged pause, Xiao Tingyuan finally spoke, his tone regaining its usual composure. From this day forth, you shall not act as Yuan any longer. Remain in the command tent by my side. Yi Qingwan looked up at him, curiosity evident in her eyes. Then how does the prince intend to promote Yuan? Surely you cannot expect me to serve as a mere tent guard? A glimmer of amusement flickered in Xiao Tingyuan's eyes as he caressed her cheek. The princess has absconded from her duties, infiltrated the military camp under false pretenses, and ventured into perilous territory. Such grave offenses necessitate that she remains close to my side, under strict supervision, never to stray far. His tone feigned seriousness, yet his eyes brimmed with tenderness. Yi Qingwan could not help but chuckle, leaning back against his chest. Very well, I shall heed the princess' wishes. Just then, an exuberant voice rang from outside the tent. Your Highness, this is Yuan Wei, requesting an audience. I come bearing good news. Our Yuan has achieved great merit. The two exchanged smiles within the tent, and Xiao Tingyuan replied in a low voice. Enter. Yuan Wei burst through the curtain, his eyes lighting up upon spotting Yuan inside. Ah, brother Yuan is here too. How fortuitous. Yi Qingwan smiled slightly and replied to him. I have just arrived. The prince summoned me to discuss rewards for merit.
Exactly.
That is precisely why I am here. Yuan Wei rubbed his hands together eagerly, then turned to Xiao Tingyuan, bowing respectfully yet with fervor. Your Highness. Yuan ventured deep into North Yen, retrieved medicinal herbs to combat the epidemic, and has thus rendered great service. Such merit surely deserves ample reward. As he spoke, he cautiously glanced at Xiao Tingyuan's expression. Xiao Tingyuan responded with a mere Yuan Wei's heart leapt with joy, seizing the momentum. I believe such significant merit warrants a promotion to a 1,000-man captain, just as the front camp is lacking in personnel. That will not be necessary. Xiao Tingyuan finally raised his gaze, calmly surveying Yuan Wei before resting his eyes on Yi Qingwan. Yuan shall remain in my tent, as my personal guard. Yuan Wei's smile faltered instantly. A personal guard? That meant being at the prince's side every day. How could he possibly lead troops into battle from there? The promising talent he had painstakingly discovered was snatched away by a single, casual remark from the prince. Your Highness. Yuan Wei stammered, flustered. While a personal guard is indeed commendable, Yuan possesses exceptional skills and should be on the front lines, gaining experience and leading troops into battle. Keeping him in the tent would be a terrible waste. Perhaps he should first be appointed as a 1,000-man captain? Xiao Tingyuan's expression darkened slightly. Are you questioning my arrangements, General Yuan? Yuan Wei felt a chill run down his spine, immediately bowing his head and clasping his fists. I would never dare. I simply. He forced a smile, turning to Yi Qingwan. Congratulations, brother Yuan. To receive such recognition from the prince, your future is boundless. You must treat me to a drink later. Before he could finish, a cold voice interrupted from above. Drinking is strictly prohibited in the military. As a commander, you violate the law. From today onward, you shall tend to the horses for a month. Yuan Wei. He was utterly bewildered. Normally, the prince turned a blind eye to the occasional private drink, but today, why was it so different? Yet, looking at the prince's inscrutable face, he dared not ask further. Only able to accept his punishment with a woeful expression. I understand my mistake. I shall go immediately. He dejectedly exited, and as the tent flap fell, the sound of his disgruntled murmurs and a long, drawn-out sigh echoed outside. Inside the tent, Yi Qingwan watched the direction in which Yuan Wei had disappeared and finally could not contain her laughter. Her gaze shifting to Xiao Tingyuan. Your Highness wields quite the authority. Xiao Tingyuan remained unfazed, pulling her closer, his fingers brushing against the bandages on her arm as he murmured. He encouraged you to drink. Should he not be punished? She smiled brightly. Indeed, indeed. The prince has the final say. Xiao Tingyuan looked down at her joyful expression, the shadows of guilt and melancholy within him dissipating slightly. He held her tighter, resting his chin atop her head, inhaling the faint scent that belonged to her.
Qingwan.
Yes, from now on, you must not conceal any ventures into danger from me. Yi Qingwan gently nodded in his embrace. Understood. He loosened his hold slightly, gazing into her eyes. I need you to promise me. Yi Qingwan met his serious gaze, her heart softening, and with a determined expression, she replied, I promise you, Xiao Tingyuan, I shall never again conceal any perilous endeavors from you. Through wind and rain, I will share the burdens with you. With her promise, the tension in Xiao Tingyuan's jaw finally softened, and a kiss landed on her forehead. It is a pact. The stable was filled with the warm scent of hay and livestock. Yuan Wei trudged in, head hanging low, listlessly carrying a feed bucket. As I lifted my gaze, I beheld a figure so familiar that it felt like a long-lost companion. Fei Yu was busily scattering hay into the feeding trough in a nearby stable compartment. Yuan Wei instantly felt a sense of camaraderie, his spirits lifting significantly. He approached, nudging Fei Yu's arm with a shoulder, and jested, "Ah, I told you, we're like grasshoppers tethered to the same string, aren't we? You seem to appear everywhere. What has happened? Has the favored one of the prince been reduced to tending to these mute beasts?" Fei Yu, startled by the nudge, let a few strands of hay fall from his hands and shot Yuan Wei an irritated glance, choosing to ignore him. Instead, he stuffed the remaining handful of hay into Yuan Wei's arms, saying, "I see you are also a clay Buddha crossing the river. Otherwise, why would you be here keeping me company? Spare me your nonsense and tend to your horse properly." Cradling the bundle of hay, Yuan Wei, undeterred, leaned in closer, his curiosity aflame. "Come now, tell me, how did you incur the prince's wrath? I noticed he was in quite a foul mood today, even sending you to feed the horses. I need to balance my heart here." Fei Yu turned his back to Yuan Wei, retorting, "What does it matter to you? I enjoy feeding the horses. It's a way to cultivate oneself. Is that not acceptable?"
Hey.
That's rather ungracious of you," Yuan Wei countered, maneuvering to face him again, persistent. "Who do you think we are? Share a little insight. Is it because of—" His eyes sparkled mischievously. "Is it due to the matter concerning brother A Yuan? Is the prince displeased, thus finding fault with us at every turn?" Fei Yu paused mid-action, glaring at Yuan Wei with a warning. "Do you think you can speculate on the prince's thoughts? Hurry and feed your horse. Speak further, and I might just assign you the task of washing the entire camp's chamber pots next time." Chapter 99. Absolutely not. As night deepened, only the sound of the wind and the rhythmic footsteps of patrolling soldiers remained outside the tent. Xiao Tingyuan set down the military texts in his hands and called softly towards the entrance. "A Yuan, come in."
Ye Qingwan responded promptly.
Lifting the curtain to enter, a knowing smile gracing her lips. "What does the prince command?" Xiao Tingyuan gazed at her, the sternness of the day dissipating into tenderness as he extended his hand. "This prince finds his bed cold and in need of warmth. This task falls to my personal guards." With a light chuckle, Qingwan stepped forward into his embrace. "Your humble servant obeys." Her cheek pressed gently against his solid chest, feeling the reassuring warmth of his heartbeat through the fabric. The crisp scent of pine mingled with a hint of candlelight enveloped her in a tender embrace. He lifted her effortlessly, carrying her towards the inner side of the camp, to a simple military bed concealed behind a screen. The following morning, before dawn had fully broken, a lingering chill pervaded the tent. Xiao Tingyuan had already risen, procuring ointment and clean silk. He carefully assisted Qingwan to sit up, gently unwrapping the coarse cloth that had bound her arm the previous day. "Does it still hurt?" He took some ointment and delicately applied it, the coolness soothing the lingering sting. Qingwan gently shook her head amidst his focused ministrations, reassuring him, "With the divine physician's medicine, it feels much better. It's just a minor injury. It's nothing serious." Xiao Tingyuan did not respond immediately, continuing his work in silence, his eyes filled with concern. Qingwan felt a warmth bloom in her heart as she lifted her face to look at him. "Truly, it's nothing. Being here by your side, witnessing your worry for me, makes this injury seem worthwhile." His gaze deepened as he locked eyes with her, firmly stating, "I would rather bear 100-fold than let you face danger again." Moved by his words, Qingwan nodded gently. "I understand. I will be more careful in the future, for you." This declaration truly resonated within Xiao Tingyuan's heart. The tension at the corners of his lips softened as he meticulously finished bandaging her wound, treating her as though she were a rare treasure.
"Today,
Remain in the tent to rest and accompany this prince in handling military affairs." Such an edict was not merely a command. It was an expression of his subtle tenderness and reluctance. Qingwan smiled softly, replying, "Yes, my prince." At that moment, a soldier's urgent voice pierced the air from outside the tent. "My prince, urgent military dispatch has arrived." Xiao Tingyuan adjusted her clothing, then rose to approach the command table, his voice regaining its cold edge. "Present it." The tent flap was thrown open, and a weary messenger rushed in, kneeling heavily on one knee and presenting a letter sealed with 3 feathers, indicating the utmost urgency. "My prince, an urgent military report from the capital. dispatched at great haste. Xiao Tingyuan accepted the letter, swiftly breaking the wax seal and scanning the contents with eagle-like intensity. As he read, his brow furrowed deeper. "What is it?" she inquired. He slowly raised his gaze to Qingwan. The promised grain supplies from the capital have been delayed once more. The Ministry of Revenue has issued a new notice, stating that shipping has been obstructed due to silted waterways, and it will be at least 2 months before transport can commence. He paused. And the grain currently available in our camp, even if distributed at half the daily rate, can only last for a month at most. Xiao Tingyuan's tone grew increasingly frigid. Furthermore, approximately 20,000 elite troops from the Longxi army have left their posts without orders and are secretly moving in the direction of the capital. Without orders? The Longxi army is encroaching upon the capital. It seems there may already be unrest within the city. Finally, his gaze returned to the military report, his tone grave. The Northern Yan army has amassed outside the pass, returning in force. Initially, it was thought to be a mere provocation, but now it appears they might have colluded. If chaos erupts in the capital of Daliang, and I am to provide assistance, the border defenses may swiftly descend into flames. As his words fell, silence enveloped the tent. Qingwan approached him, speaking softly. "Do not worry about the grain. We still have supplies in the granary. Have Fei Yu coordinate with nearby cities. It can reach us within half a month at most." Her granary was finally proving its worth. Xiao Tingyuan nodded slightly, feeling a sense of relief. He turned to the messenger. "Relay the order. The entire army is to enter the highest state of readiness immediately and dispatch another team of scouts for reconnaissance." "Yes, my prince." The messenger complied and quickly departed. For a moment, only the two of them remained within the tent. Xiao Tingyuan turned to Qingwan, his expression more serious than ever. She looked at him, softly advising, "Qiyuan, you must not act impulsively at this moment." At her words, an odd calm washed over the anxiety in his heart. "I understand. The unrest in the capital was anticipated, but I did not expect it to arrive so swiftly. Nor did I foresee collusion with Northern Yan." Xiao Tingyuan moved to the sand table, his gaze sharpening and focusing once more. The emergence of that prodigious figure from Northern Yan had disrupted his original plans, becoming the greatest variable, leaving him beset on all sides, making it difficult to act with full force. Now, surrounded, the only way to break the deadlock was through decisive strikes against each enemy separately. Qingwan's clear voice shattered the silence. He looked up to see her standing quietly on the opposite side of the sand table. "What is your perspective?" Qingwan picked up a small flag and planted it at a crucial point on the sand table. The Longxi army, on their way back to the capital, must pass through Meifeng Ridge. This place, with its towering mountains and dense woods, is an ideal location for an ambush. Xiao Tingyuan's brow furrowed as he immediately pointed out the critical issue. Meifeng Ridge is indeed a choke point. However, if I split my forces to set an ambush, the camp will be left vulnerable. The Northern Yan commander is no fool and will surely seize the opportunity to attack. At that time, not only will the ambush fail, but our main camp will also be at risk of being overrun. It is not necessary to send the entire army to engage in a desperate fight. Qingwan met his doubtful gaze, her eyes sharp. The strategy of the military states, to capture the leader before the followers. We only need a small elite force to infiltrate Meifeng Ridge and, when they are least prepared, accurately seize the core leaders of the Longxi army. Once they are without a leader, the morale of the rest will surely falter and become ineffective. This maneuver requires no large troop movements, thus denying Northern Yan any chance to exploit weaknesses. Xiao Tingyuan studied the geography of Meifeng Ridge on the sand table, his mind racing with calculations. Though this plan was risky, it was undoubtedly the optimal solution to break the current deadlock. He pondered aloud. This strategy is indeed unexpected and may yield remarkable results. However, the one who executes this task must possess the audacity and skill to take the head of a general amidst a multitude, coupled with a meticulous mind and the ability to adapt swiftly to changing circumstances. Who would be the most suitable to undertake this daunting mission?
"I shall go."
Qingwan declared, without the slightest hesitation, her tone resolute. "All I require is a team well-versed in the terrain of Longxi." "Absolutely not," Xiao Tingyuan vehemently objected, his voice rising sharply, infused with an undeniable severity. "Your injuries are not fully healed. This undertaking would be akin to courting death. I cannot allow you to risk such peril." In his eyes, she sensed a fury she had never witnessed before. Chapter 100, Meifeng Ridge. Qingwan remained undeterred by his sternness. Meeting his gaze, her tone steady yet unwavering, she replied, "Qiyuan, you know in your heart that there is no one more fitting for this role than I. You must trust me." Xiao Zhiyuan's lips were pressed into a thin line, his jaw clenched tightly, remaining silent. She took a step closer, her eyes fixed on Meifeng Ridge on the sand table, continuing. The essence of the ambush at Meifeng Ridge lies in its uniqueness and speed. The generals in the camp, while valiant, often lack the finesse required, leading to protracted warfare, whereas those skilled in strategy may falter under pressure. As for me. She paused momentarily, her gaze clear and bright as she looked at him. I am fully aware of your overarching plan, understand the priorities, and comprehend the necessity of trade-offs. More importantly, I am familiar with the tactics employed by those in the capital, enabling me to discern the intentions of the Longxi military commanders and their potential contingencies. But your injury. He voiced his concern. The wounds are superficial. They pose no hindrance to my actions, Qingwan interjected. At this juncture, stabilizing the border and intimidating Beiyan necessitates your presence at the command center. Dividing our forces would be a grave mistake. Only a meticulously selected elite unit can launch a surprise attack at the critical point to unravel this predicament. Zhiyuan, this is the optimal strategy. And you understand this better than I. How could he not recognize the validity of her assertions? In the entirety of the army, whether in cunning, martial prowess, or character, she was indeed the most impeccable choice for this mission. Yet, the mere thought of her once more venturing into the lion's den, facing the immense danger posed by tens of thousands of soldiers, weighed heavily upon his heart, suffocating him with anxiety. He abruptly turned away, presenting his back to her, still unwilling to relent. Qingwan observed his tense posture, a fleeting pang of compassion washing over her. Softening her tone, she added another bargaining chip. If you remain unconvinced, then allow Fei Yu to accompany me. His skills are commendable, and with his assistance, my chances of success increase significantly. At her words, he seemed to falter for a moment, finally turning to face her, reluctantly uttering a single word, fine. He raised his gaze, locking his sharp eyes onto hers. But I have conditions. Upon reaching Meifeng Ridge, all operational plans must be reported to me daily via carrier pigeon. He stepped closer, his fists clenched tightly. Moreover, should any unforeseen circumstances arise, you are to abandon the mission immediately and return to me. I demand your safe return. This is a military order. His tone was grave. Qingwan understood that this was his utmost concession. She nodded solemnly, her eyes resolute. I promise you, I will return alive. Xiao Zhiyuan inhaled deeply, forcibly suppressing the tumult of unease within him. He turned to his desk, hastily scribbling 2 orders, sealing them with his official stamp. Take my orders and select your personnel from the Shadow Guard. Ensure all necessary supplies are fully prepared. Depart secretly from the western gate in half an hour. He handed her the orders, his voice regaining its usual coldness, yet the profound concern in his eyes remained unmistakable. Understood, she affirmed, taking the orders and giving him a deep glance before turning briskly and lifting the tent flap to exit. As the curtain fell, it separated her from his ever-watchful, heavy gaze. Xiao Zhiyuan stood alone in the vast military tent, his focus fixed on the strategic Meifeng Ridge on the sand table, motionless. Slowly, he closed his eyes, whispering to himself, Qingwan, you must return alive. Once again, he found himself compelled to allow her to take such a perilous risk. Half an hour later, outside the tent, a small squad of light cavalry silently exited the military camp through the western gate. For several consecutive days, the group traveled day and night, avoiding the main roads and populated areas, opting instead for concealed paths. That night, under a sparsely starry sky, the team took a brief respite in a sheltered valley, tending to their horses and eating. Fei Yu approached Qingwan, offering her a piece of hardtack, lowering his voice, his eyes glimmering. Princess, how did you manage to convince the prince to allow you to come? He must be worried sick. Qingwan accepted the hardtack, casting him a fleeting glance before taking a bite, then replied, the prince prioritizes the greater good. Fei Yu chuckled, clearly skeptical of her formal speech. I saw it with my own eyes. When you left, the prince stood at the tent entrance for a long time, his gaze as if he were about to devour someone. Had it not been for the urgency of military affairs, I bet he would have locked you by his side. Qingwan lowered her eyelashes, concealing a hint of emotion, yet her voice remained steady. Do not speak nonsense. This mission is fraught with difficulty. Stow away your curiosity and pay attention to the surrounding terrain. Fei Yu immediately straightened up, though his chatter did not cease. Yes, yes. You can count on me. I will ensure your safety. The prince has issued a strict command. He patted the dagger at his waist, determined not to let any of the Longxi scoundrels harm her in the slightest. Qingwan regarded his youthful yet resolute profile, her heart warming slightly, her tone softening. I know you are capable. Eat quickly. We must resume our journey. We need to arrive at Mayfoam Ridge at least 2 days ahead of the Longxi forces. Not a problem. Fei Yu finished his hardtack in a few bites, eager to proceed. After several more days of hurried travel, the group, weary yet determined, finally arrived at the vicinity of Mayfoam Ridge. Before them, the mountains rose and fell, their peaks towering, ancient trees reaching for the sky, while a narrow official road wound like a serpent through the valley between two steep cliffs, confirming the strategic precariousness of the terrain. This is the place. Qingwan reined in her horse, surveying the surroundings with the sharpness of an eagle. She dismounted with agility and commanded, Fei Yu, take 2 others and immediately scout higher ground to assess the terrain, identifying the most suitable locations for ambush and observation, as well as retreat routes. The rest of you, conceal yourselves and remain alert. Understood. Fei Yu acknowledged, selecting the 2 most adept scouts from the Shadow Guard, and they vanished silently into the dense forest. Approximately an hour later, Fei Yu and his companions returned, their expressions reflecting a sense of achievement. My lord, I found a great spot. Fei Yu whispered excitedly, his eyes sparkling. There's a protruding rock halfway up the mountain that can conceal many people, with an excellent vantage point. Nearby, there's a steep yet passable path leading to the back mountain. In case of an emergency, we can retreat swiftly. Take me to see it, Qingwan instructed promptly. Under Fei Yu's guidance, she personally examined the site, which indeed proved to be an exceptional location for an ambush. She scrutinized the massive rock, already formulating her strategy in her mind. Excellent. She regarded Fei Yu with approval. This will be our chosen site. She turned to face all the team members, her demeanor serious, and began issuing a series of clear and precise commands. Immediately establish a concealed observation point here. Fei Yu, take a few men responsible for monitoring the activity on the official road. Should you spot any scouts from the Longxi forces, report back at once. But do not alarm them. The rest of you, in groups, disperse to survey the surroundings, identifying all possible routes, water sources, and usable terrain. We must embed ourselves here like a nail, waiting for our prey to fall into the trap. Remember, our objective is not to annihilate the enemy forces, but to capture their commanders. Actions must be swift. Once we have succeeded, retreat immediately, avoiding any prolonged engagement. Understood. The group responded quietly, swiftly dispersing to fulfill their respective duties. Qingwan moved behind the massive rock, gazing down at the silent valley road, her expression calm and resolute. In her heart, she whispered, Ji Yuan, await my news. Chapter 101. Success. Northern Border, Commander's Tent. Unlike the perilous ambush at Mayfoam Ridge, the battlefield faced by Xiao Tingyuan was starkly different, yet equally fraught with tension. The flickering torches within the tent crackled, illuminating the austere profile of Xiao Tingyuan as he scrutinized the strategic map laid before him. His brow furrowed, his keen gaze piercing through the small flags representing the Northern Yan army. The recent developments in the conflict exuded an aura of unsettling irregularity. Report. A scout dashed into the tent, kneeling on one knee, his voice laced with urgency. Your Highness. A 1,000-strong vanguard from the Northern Yan has appeared 30 miles northeast at Heifeng Valley, disrupting a supply convoy of ours, and before our reinforcements could arrive, they swiftly retreated. Report. Another messenger burst in, breathless. The signal fire tower in the southwest has raised an alarm, indicating the presence of approximately 500 Northern Yan cavalry patrolling the border, who engaged briefly with our patrol squad before vanishing into thin air. Report. Your Highness. The enemy's main camp is adorned with banners, yet the gates remain shut, showing no signs of engagement. A stream of military reports flooded in, revealing no signs of a massive army closing in, but rather a guerrilla-style offensive characterized by rapid strikes. Xiao Tingyuan let out a cold chuckle, addressing the situation with a sardonic tone. The Qilanzi. The commanders under his command exchanged perplexed and impatient glances. Your Highness, what is the Northern Yan army playing at? They fight insincerely and retreat faster than rabbits, engaging in petty theft and cowardly antics. Yuan Wei exclaimed, unable to contain his frustration. Indeed, Your Highness, they are as slippery as eels. We stand ready for battle. Yet they poke and prod, rendering this conflict exasperating. Xiao Tingyuan raised his hand, instantly silencing the tent. He was not merely seeking victory. His voice, calm and analytical, peeled away the layers of confusion. He was stalling for time. Stalling? The generals were bewildered. Precisely. Xiao Tingyuan traced the area of Northern Yan troop movements on the map with his finger. observe their targets, supply convoys, patrols, border villages. None of these are pivotal to the larger strategy, yet they serve to exhaust our energies. Their actions are swift, striking and withdrawing without engaging in prolonged combat. This is not the strategy of a decisive battle. He paused, a glint of coldness in his eyes. They are testing us, provoking us, and most importantly, they are attempting to hinder our reinforcements. Considering the peculiar movements in the capital and the autonomous actions of the Longxi army, the intentions of the Qingwan became almost painfully clear. He may not wish, nor need, to confront Xiao Tingyuan's main forces in a decisive showdown at this moment. His sole objective was to keep the formidable Shura King, who instilled fear in the northern territories, firmly anchored here, preventing him from returning to assist the capital. Once the capital achieved its aims, a pincer movement would ensue, plunging the situation into genuine peril. What a clever strategy of besieging the point to aid the flank, no. A strategy of entangling the point to aid the flank. Xiao Tingyuan scoffed, having discerned the opponent's calculations. This Qingwan was indeed cunning and ruthless in his military tactics. However, he could not afford to act rashly, nor allow himself to be led by the nose. The main forces must remain steadfast. Any breach in the border defenses could yield catastrophic consequences. Yet, thoughts of potential upheaval in the capital gnawed at him, igniting a deep-seated anxiety within. He could only wait now, wait for news from Meifeng Ridge, for an opportunity that could shatter the impasse. Drawing a deep breath, he suppressed all emotions and spoke coldly. Relay orders to all troops to firmly defend the encampments and various passes, intensify patrols, and expand the reconnaissance range. Should the enemy attempt further incursions with small units, engage them with equal force and annihilate them, but avoid reckless pursuits to prevent drawing the tiger from its lair. I shall see how long he can sustain this charade. Yes. 2 days later, as dusk fell, the sky darkened ominously. Meifeng Ridge was eerily quiet, save for the wind that howled more urgently than usual through the treetops. In the distance, a serpentine line of troops came into view. Fei Yu, who had been lying in wait behind a rock, suddenly darted back, nearly brushing the ground as he rushed to Yi Qingwan's side, whispering excitedly, "They've arrived. Look over there, a seemingly endless stream is making its way into the valley. In the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, the vanguard will pass right beneath our noses." Yi Qingwan's eyes sharpened with icy resolve. Silently, she signaled to her concealed shadow guards, who instantly transitioned into battle readiness, the air thickening with unspoken menace. Peering through the crevices of the rocks, she beheld the Longxi army's advance, the vanguard slowly entering the gorge. The sounds of clashing armor, thundering hooves, and distant shouts floated up with the mountain breeze. As time ticked away, the column continued its slow progress. Yi Qingwan's gaze fixed intently on several commanders, flanked by their loyal guards, riding at the center of the formation. Their armor bore distinctive markings, making their identities unmistakable. "Remain calm, let them pass," she instructed in a hushed tone. Fei Yu, nerves taut, licked his lips, gripping the hilt of his blade tightly. Finally, the corps commanders trotted past the narrow thoroughfare.
Now.
Yi Qingwan's voice cut through the air sharply. Drawing upon her inner strength, she struck her palm against a massive boulder. The rock, responding to her command, thunderously tumbled down the slope toward the road below. A deafening roar erupted, shaking the very mountains. Dust and debris erupted into the sky, burying the soldiers who had no time to scatter. What is happening? The mountain is collapsing. Protect the general. Chaos erupted among the Longxi troops below. Screams, terrified whinnies of horses, and the thunder of falling rocks melded into a cacophony. The boulder crashed squarely in the midst of the column, cleaving the formation in two, isolating the soldiers behind from their commanders ahead. Loose arrows. Almost simultaneously with the boulder's impact, Yi Qingwan's chilling command rang out. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The crossbow bolts, primed and ready, flew from concealed positions on the mountainside, striking with precision at the stunned entourage of the commanders. The sound of arrows slicing through the air was sharp and piercing. Unprepared, the Longxi soldiers fell in droves, panic gripping both men and beasts. The formation spiraling into complete disarray. Enemy attack. There's an ambush.
Form up.
Quickly, form up, shouted a quick-witted officer. But his warning was cut short as a crossbow bolt pierced his throat.
Now.
Follow me down. Claim the heads of the enemy commanders.
Je Qingwan kommandet fierce.
Drawing her flexible sword, her figure a wisp of smoke as she surged down the slope. Fei Yu followed closely, resembling a hunting leopard, the blade in his hand glinting ominously. A dozen shadow guards erupted like specters, diving into the chaotic enemy ranks. Qingwan's target was clear, heading directly for the commanders, fiercely protected by their guards, trying to retreat. The gleam of her sword swept through the air, precisely slicing the throats of those who dared block her path. Fei Yu shielded her flank, his strikes ruthless and swift, each blow lethal, clearing a path through the oncoming foes. Close combat ensued, blood and flesh flying. The air was filled with roars, the clash of weapons, and the screams of the wounded, reverberating throughout the narrow gorge. Kill them! Cut them down! A ferocious Longxi commander, cornered and desperate, roared in rage, disregarding all caution as he charged at Qingwan, his blades slicing through the air. Qingwan sidestepped deftly, her soft sword striking like a viper, expertly penetrating the gaps in his armor. The commander staggered back, and Fei Yu seized the moment to deliver the fatal blow. A second commander, witnessing the demise of his comrade, turned to flee, only to be intercepted by descending shadow guards, who swiftly brandished their daggers. The battle was fierce yet brief. The elite shadow guards executed precise beheading maneuvers amid the enemy's disarray and confusion. In less than the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, the corps commanders had all been dispatched. Qingwan surveyed the battlefield, observing that the Longxi army, blocked by the boulder, had begun to attempt scaling it or circumventing it from the steep slopes, yet chaos reigned supreme. Fei Yu moved with remarkable speed, swiftly executing the task at hand, efficiently placing the gruesome severed heads into the prepared leather pouch. Approaching Qingwan, she declared, "We've succeeded. Let's retreat." Qingwan nodded, immediately issuing the order to withdraw. Showing no inclination to linger in battle, the shadow guards disengaged from the confrontation with the same swiftness with which they had arrived. Hastily retreating along the previously scouted steep paths toward the back mountains, their figures quickly vanishing into the darkness of the dense forest. All that remained in the valley was a scene of chaos, filled with wails of despair, and a group of soldiers in disarray, having lost their leader. As the night wind swept through, the heavy stench of blood and the acrid scent of battle lingered in the air. Qingwan cast a final glance at the tumultuous crowd before resolutely disappearing into the depths of the forest. The mission accomplished, it was time to return and report. Chapter 102. The North is Mine. In the capital, within the East Palace, the Crown Prince's face was ashen as he violently shattered the jade teacup in his hand. Incompetence. Utter incompetence. He bellowed. What of the Longxi army? Wasn't it supposed to be foolproof? Why is there still no word? What on earth has happened at Meifeng Ridge? His trusted aides below trembled in fear. Your Highness, please calm your anger. Perhaps the mountain paths are treacherous and have caused delays. Delays? The Crown Prince seized the man by his collar. Xiao Tingyuan is entangled in the north. This is a golden opportunity. Without the Longxi army's deterrence, how could those old fools be expected to comply? The communication breakdown of the Longxi army had thrown all his plans into disarray. His gaze turned increasingly sinister and frenzied. It seems we must advance our plans. We can wait no longer. He abruptly turned to the third prince, who had been sitting quietly in a circular chair, silent. Third brother, given the circumstances, what do you think? The third prince slowly raised his eyelids and replied calmly, Crown Prince, the arrow has left the bow. There is no turning back. Hesitation at this moment is the true path to ruin. Indeed, the Crown Prince seized upon this notion, his eyes brimming with fervor. Father is old and frail.
He deserves to rest.
A sinister smile crept across his face as he addressed the third prince. Third brother, we need to be particularly vigilant regarding the palace guards, especially around Father's quarters. The third prince nodded slightly, maintaining his composed demeanor, though a flicker of faint mockery passed through his eyes. In the northern camp, at the western secret passage as exit, the biting cold wind howled, stinging like daggers against the skin. Xiao Tingyuan stood with several trusted personal guards, hands clasped behind his back, as his dark cloak billowed in the wind. He remained as immovable as a boulder, his gaze fixated on the remote path leading into the distance. Upon receiving news of the victory at Meifeng Ridge, he had awaited here anxiously. Each moment of waiting felt like an eternity, tormenting him with uncertainty about her safety. Just then, a series of faint black dots appeared on the distant horizon, gradually approaching. His spine straightened immediately, pupils constricting. As the figures drew nearer, he could discern the outlines of riders. Though moving slowly and appearing somewhat fatigued, they retained a sharp vigilance. Leading them was a slender yet upright figure, one etched in his very bones. It was Qingwan. She had finally returned, the weight on his heart, suspended for days. Could at last be lifted? Yet his expression remained frozen in its icy sternness, only the tightly clenched fist at his side betraying the tumult of emotions within. The procession gradually advanced. Qingwan reined in her horse, her face marked by the weariness of her long journey. Upon seeing him, a smile curved her lips. She nimbly dismounted and approached him, cupping her fists in salute. "My lord, I have fulfilled my mission." Xiao Tingyuan did not respond immediately. His gaze swept over her from head to toe, confirming that aside from her fatigue, she bore no visible injuries, and he finally exhaled in relief. He stepped forward, removed his cloak, still warm from his body, and draped it around her shoulders with an air of insistence, enveloping her snugly. "I'm just glad you're back," he finally spoke, suppressing a myriad of emotions, which crystallized into the simplest of 4 words. Qingwan felt the residual warmth of his cloak, stirring the softest corners of her heart. She wrapped herself in the cloak, lifted her gaze to meet his, and cheerfully remarked, "My lord, we achieved a great victory at Meifeng Ridge. The core commanders of the Longxi army have all been eliminated, and their 20,000 elite troops are now leaderless, rendering them unable to pose a threat." He gazed deeply into her eyes. "Well done. You have done remarkably." In that moment, he felt a swell of pride for her. Ahem. Unable to contain himself any longer, Feiyu pretended to cough, drawing attention to the fact that everyone was watching with rapt attention. Though all present were trusted personal guards and knew her to be their princess, the intensity of the crown prince's gaze was rather too affectionate. Xiao Tingyuan snapped back to reality, swiftly suppressing the tumultuous emotions in his eyes. Restoring the calm and authority of a commander, he turned to Feiyu. "Feiyu, your protection of the princess has been commendable. Well done. Past grievances shall be overlooked." He then instructed, "Take the injured brothers below to recuperate." "Yes, thank you, my lord." Feiyu, feeling as if a great burden had been lifted, hurriedly bowed and led the weary shadow guards in a swift retreat. Only then did Xiao Tingyuan turn back to Qingwan, his voice softening slightly. "Let us discuss the details in the tent." Qingwan nodded gently, walking alongside him toward the main tent. Just as they entered, an urgent call from an envoy outside punctuated the air. "My lord, urgent news from the capital. Enter." The tent flap was flung open, and a messenger, lips cracked and bleeding, stumbled in, dropping to one knee as he shakily held up a letter drenched in sweat. "My lord, urgent news from the capital. 800 miles away." The brothers risked their lives to deliver this. Xiao Tingyuan felt the warmth in his eyes dissipate instantly, his brows furrowing. He stepped forward, snatched the letter, and quickly unfolded it to read its contents. Upon finishing, his expression darkened rapidly, a palpable pressure enveloping the air. Qingwan's heart plummeted, as she had never witnessed him so furious. "What has happened?" She stepped forward, her voice taut with concern. Xiao Tingyuan slowly lifted his gaze, handing her the letter as he coldly stated, "The crown prince cannot wait any longer." Qingwan took the letter, her eyes rapidly scanning the text. "The capital is under complete lockdown. The East Palace has taken full control of the 9 gates 3 days ago. His Majesty is gravely ill and has been placed under soft house arrest in the Yangxin Palace under the guise of recuperation, with all attendants replaced, preventing any news from leaking out. The third prince has seized control of the palace guards, blocking all entrances and exits to the various palaces. The crown prince seeks to usurp power, coercing His Majesty into signing an abdication decree. I implore my lord to return swiftly to take charge of the situation." Each word struck like a venomous dagger, piercing the heart. Qingwan inhaled sharply, looking up at Xiao Tingyuan. "They dare to go this far." "Of course they dare." Xiao Tingyuan's voice was laced with suppressed fury. Without the threat of the Longxi army, he is desperate, cornered like a rat, resorting to the quickest and most brutal means to seize power. "And my dear third brother," he scoffed. "He is the most insidious serpent lurking behind the crown prince. I fear the crown prince is still oblivious. My lord, we must return immediately to provide support." Qingwan urged, "His Majesty and the loyal ministers are in grave danger." "I know, however." Xiao Tingyuan closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. When he opened them again, all emotions had been forcibly suppressed. He turned to Qingwan, his gaze heavy. "If I lead the light cavalry away, the northern defense will be left vulnerable. Qi Linzi is no fool, once he senses it." Qingwan interrupted, "The north is under my watch. You need not worry. I will safeguard this territory for you. Not an inch shall be lost." Xiao Tingyuan's brow furrowed tightly, the inner turmoil evident in his eyes. To place her in danger was a greater torment than facing the peril himself in the capital's heart. Sensing his hesitation, Qingwan stepped closer, meeting his gaze directly. her words imbued with gravity. As long as I am here, the north shall remain secure. You must go and break the siege in the capital. They need you more. Xiao Tingyuan gazed deeply into her eyes, a myriad of words caught in his throat, ultimately transforming into a gravely weighted nod. He believed her. Very well. His voice rasped, I shall let Fei Yu. No, Qingwan decisively interrupted. Fei Yu must accompany you. The capital is currently a den of peril. You must have the most capable individuals by your side for me to feel even the slightest sense of security. As for Bai Yan, though Qi Linzi is cunning, I do not stand alone. Generals Yuan Wei and others are present. They are well versed in border military affairs and are valiant warriors. With their assistance, we can manage. It is your solitude that truly troubles me. He ceased his insistence, abruptly turning away, commanding, dispatch orders. All shadow guards. Within the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, prepare ample rations and assemble for duty. Yes, your highness. Xiao Tingyuan cast a final glance at Qingwan, their eyes meeting in a silent understanding. Then, resolutely, he turned and strode out of the tent. Chapter 103. An Ambush. In the Bai Yan camp, within the royal tent, Yan Nanchen reclined languidly in a spacious chair adorned with tiger skin, his long fingers rhythmically tapping the armrest. Beneath the tent, Jisun could no longer contain himself, his voice gruff. My lord. The scouts report that the Shura King's camp seems to be exhibiting unusual activity these past few days. The cooking smoke appears to be thinning. What are we waiting for? We should directly deploy our forces and crush them. Perhaps the Shura King has secretly returned to the capital for reinforcement. They had also received secret missives from the capital of Daliang yesterday, indicating unrest there, leading them to surmise that the Shura King must be planning some action. Yan Nanchen chuckled lightly at this, lifting a cup of warm mare's milk and taking a sip, responding leisurely. Jisun, your impatience is as evident as ever. He set down the cup, his gaze drifting towards the northern borders, calmly analyzing. What manner of person is Xiao Tingyuan? A master of warfare, meticulous in thought. How could he possibly lack contingency plans? Jisun's brow furrowed in confusion. Then, what does my lord imply? Our objective has never been to engage in a decisive battle with Xiao Tingyuan's main forces at this moment. The intentions of the Daliang Crown Prince and the Third Prince may deceive others, but they cannot deceive me. One is foolish, the other treacherous. They make a perfect pair. We need only lie in wait, biding our time, and that will suffice. He raised his eyes. Noting the delay of the Longxi army in reaching the capital, the Crown Prince will undoubtedly become desperate, compelling his father to abdicate. And Xiao Tingyuan will not stand idly by. At this moment, he must be far more anxious than we are. Then, we must not let him succeed. Jisun exclaimed urgently. Let him be, Yan Nanchen replied nonchalantly. Let him return. The more chaos in Daliang, the more advantageous it is for us. Once the brothers are at each other's throats, fighting to the death, ideally inflicting mutual destruction. He paused, a chilling intent seeping into his voice. That will be the opportune moment for my Bai Yan cavalry to descend and reap the benefits. To charge now would merely serve to distract the Crown Prince. A foolish endeavor indeed. Jisun suddenly comprehended, scratching his head. Your insight is profound, my lord. Then shall we continue to play along with them? Indeed. Yan Nanchen reclined back into the tiger skin, closing his eyes as if to rest. Let us continue to dispatch small units of cavalry for harassment. We can increase the intensity. The real spectacle is still to come. Understood. In the main tent of the northern commander, the generals gathered as Qingwan spoke, instantly capturing their attention. The situation is urgent. The prince has secretly led his personal guards back to the capital to restore order. Until his return, I shall temporarily oversee the northern defenses. She exhibited no sign of trepidation, her gaze sweeping across each seasoned general present, including General Yuan Wei, whose expression was a blend of complexity and disbelief at the revelation that his former comrade was now the prince's consort. I know that some of you may harbor doubts, she continued, but I, Qingwan, vow to stand with you through thick and thin, safeguarding every inch of land that the prince and you have fought for with your blood and sweat. I implore the esteemed generals for your unwavering support. General Yuan Wei was the first to clasp his fists solemnly, declaring, this subordinate shall faithfully obey the consort's command. I will do my utmost to protect the northern borders. After all, the consort's prowess was evident, rivaling that of the generals present. The other commanders, witnessing this, also bowed and clasped their fists. We shall obey the consort's command. Very well, Qingwan nodded, refraining from further elaboration as she delved straight into the matter at hand. The prince's departure would not go unnoticed by Bai Yan. That Yan Nanxian is particularly cunning. We must prepare thoroughly. She pointed to several crucial passes on the sand table. General Yuan, I request that you immediately augment the forces and fortify the defenses at Huangfeng Valley and Eaglebeak Cliff, ensuring an ample supply of rolling logs and boulders to prevent enemy forces from launching a strong assault. Understood. General Yuan Wei clasped his fists.
General Li.
She turned to another commander responsible for reconnaissance. Deploy 3 times the scouts to expand our reconnaissance range. I must maintain constant awareness of the movements of the Bai Yan camp and its roaming cavalry. We cannot overlook a single detail. Yes, Commander Wang. Logistics are of utmost importance. Ensure smooth and timely supply lines. From today onward, elevate the camp's alertness to the highest level, doubling the frequency of nighttime patrols. A series of clear and precise orders flowed from her lips, thoroughly considered, even anticipating various deceptions that Yan Nanshun might employ. The generals, initially fraught with apprehension, gradually became convinced, their gazes imbued with genuine respect. This consort was far from a sheltered woman. Her familiarity with military affairs and her acute judgment of the situation exceeded their expectations. Yi Qingwan finally directed her gaze toward the portion of the sand table representing the Bai Yan camp, her eyes sharp. Yan Nanchen seeks to delay, to exhaust us, to witness our internal strife. We must instead remain steadfast as a mountain, solid as a fortress. If he wishes to test us, let him come. But let every claw he extends be ruthlessly severed. The generals within the tent felt a surge of fervor ignited within them, responding in unison. Yes. Meanwhile, the light cavalry shadow guards led by Xiao Tingyuan pressed on, traversing back to the capital day and night, striving to avoid all official roads and cities. The atmosphere grew increasingly ominous as they advanced. At several key checkpoints leading towards the capital, inspections had suddenly become unusually stringent. The soldiers stationed there were no longer clad in the familiar uniforms of the capital's garrison but had been replaced by unfamiliar officers, subjecting passers-by to excessively rigorous questioning, detaining anyone who aroused the slightest suspicion. Your Highness, look at the flags. They belong to the East Palace's direct lineage, the Iwei camp, Fei Yu whispered, his expression grave. We cannot pass this checkpoint. The scrutiny is too severe. With so many of us, we will undoubtedly be stopped. Xiao Zhiyuan's expression turned frigid. The Crown Prince's actions were indeed swift. He had even replaced the personnel at the checkpoints surrounding the capital with his own, resolutely intent on keeping him outside. We shall circumvent it, he declared without hesitation, opting for the ancient path through the Tsangyun mountain range. My lord, that route is treacherous and will require an additional half-day's journey, Fei Yu cautioned. It matters not, however perilous it may be. It is preferable to confronting the Iwei camp's checkpoint head-on. Xiao Zhiyuan's gaze remained calm. We have no time to waste. Let us proceed. The group once again delved into the more desolate and remote depths of the mountains. The ancient path was rugged and difficult, requiring them to dismount and climb on foot at intervals. The mountain air was bitterly cold at night, and they could only rely on a small campfire for warmth, gnawing on cold rations. On the third night, icy raindrops began to fall from the sky, rendering the mountain path muddy and slippery, complicating their progress. Just as they struggled through a narrow mountain valley, disaster struck. Whoosh! Several poisoned crossbow bolts suddenly shot out from the dense forest on either side, aimed directly at Xiao Zhiyuan at the center of the group. An ambush! Protect the prince! Fei Yu reacted swiftly, shouting, drawing his sword to deflect one of the bolts. The shadow guard surged forth in an instant, encircling Xiao Zhiyuan, swords clashing with a cacophony of sounds as they deflected most of the bolts. Yet, one guard let out a muffled groan, an arrow lodged in his shoulder, the wound turning instantly black. The arrows are poisoned. Someone cried out. The assailants remained concealed, unleashing a relentless barrage of crossbow bolts from the shadows, striking with precision and ferocity, clearly the work of seasoned assassins who had long laid in wait. Xiao Zhiyuan's expression darkened like stormy waters. The prince's men. It was implausible for them to have found this place so swiftly. It must be the third prince. He had anticipated they would opt for this route. Chapter 104. The Palace Coup. A glint of cold light flickered in Xiao Zhiyuan's eyes as he swiftly assessed the situation. He had long foreseen that his return to the capital would be fraught with peril. Eliminate them. Leave no one alive, he commanded in a chilling tone. A few of the most agile shadow guards, like phantoms, slipped stealthily into the dense thickets, using the trees and rocks for cover. Soon, the air was filled with the sharp clang of metal against metal. Despite the assassins' expertise in stealthy killings, they were no match for these elite shadow guards in direct combat. The rain intensified, washing away the mud and the faint traces of blood seeping through the earth. In the span of a brief tea session, the sounds of the skirmish in the woods began to wane. Fei Yu emerged from the forest, drenched and speckled with droplets of blood, cupping his fists in salute. "My lord, there were a total of 21 assassins in ambush, and they have all been eliminated. We suffered 1 poisoned comrade and 2 with minor injuries. Can we ascertain their identities?" Xiao Tingyuan inquired. Fei Yu produced a token retrieved from the leader of the assassins, presenting it with both hands. The token, made of an unusual material, bore no markings, only a faint cloud pattern. Xiao Tingyuan accepted the token, his fingertips tracing the delicate design. A cold smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. A knife to kill from afar? This token belongs to the prince, but the mastermind may not be the same. The poisoned brother. Fei Yu expressed his concern. Xiao Tingyuan swiftly approached the injured shadow guard, inspecting the wound. The blackened area around the arrow wound was slowly spreading, the guard's complexion turning ashen, breaths coming in rapid gasps. Xiao Tingyuan promptly retrieved an antidote pill from his belongings, placing it into the guard's mouth, and with deft hands. He excised the necrotic flesh before applying a healing salve. The toxin was temporarily subdued, but he needed urgent and thorough medical attention. "Hold on. We will reach the capital soon," Xiao Tingyuan urged in a low voice. "Thank you, my lord. I can endure," the shadow guard gritted through clenched teeth. As the rain eased slightly, Xiao Tingyuan mounted his horse and cast a glance back toward the northern frontier. Once the crisis in the capital was resolved, the north would be secure. Advance. The group vanished once more into the obscurity of the rain-soaked night and treacherous mountain paths, moving with increased speed. Days later, the majestic silhouette of the capital finally appeared on the horizon. However, as they drew closer, the atmosphere grew ever more tense and ominous. The once bustling capital was now eerily silent, its gates firmly shut. The number of soldiers guarding the city had doubled, clad in armor and on high alert, crossbows drawn and ready. Xiao Tingyuan and his contingent of shadow guards concealed themselves in an abandoned village outside the city, where, through the crumbling walls, they could see the flag of the Eastern Palace's imperial guards fluttering atop the city walls. "My lord, all 4 city gates have been sealed, and the guards are all from the Eastern Palace, conducting stringent inspections," Fei Yu whispered as he stealthily approached Xiao Tingyuan. The latter's gaze, sharp as a hawk's, swept over every battlement and watchtower, absorbing the enemy's defensive layout with calm composure. The prince, emboldened to take action, would undoubtedly fortify the capital like a fortress.
Wait.
He uttered a single word, his voice low and filled with patience. Wait for nightfall. Wait for the signal. Surely, he had not left the capital without a contingency plan. Time crawled by in a torturous wait. As night deepened, the city within offered little illumination, save for the flickering torches atop the city towers. Suddenly, the western gate of the capital creaked open. Xiao Tingyuan's eyes brightened, and with a low command, "Go." Without hesitation, he mounted his horse, leading the charge like an arrow loosed from a bow. Thousands of shadow guards followed swiftly and in unison, making not a sound. The battalions surged into the city like a dark tempest. Upon entering the inner gate, Loyal Bo rushed forward to meet Xiao Tingyuan, anxious. "My lord, you have finally arrived." Xiao Tingyuan reined at his horse. "What is the situation?" "The palace is in a critical state. His Majesty has been placed under house arrest in the Yangxin Hall. The prince plans to stage a coup tonight." "I understand. Secure this location. Reinforcements are on their way." Without pausing, Xiao Tingyuan left those words behind and led his men straight towards the palace. Inside the Yangxin Hall, the old emperor lay against the dragon bed. His complexion ashen, breaths labored, his trembling hand pointed accusingly at the third prince, Xiao Ju.
Affilial son.
"I am not dead yet. Are you so impatient to seize this throne?" The emperor's voice was hoarse, tinged with sorrow and resentment. The prince's once placid demeanor had vanished, replaced by impatience and ruthlessness. "Father, you are old. This kingdom should have been relinquished long ago. Just look at the state of the realm now. The northern front is in turmoil, and factions abound in the court.
Can you endure this?"
It would be wise to draft a decree of abdication. I shall ensure the stability of the Liang dynasty." "Stability? By your hand?" The emperor coughed in anger. "Do you think that by staging a coup you can secure the throne? Yuan is still in the north. The old ministers of the court will not submit to you. You are pushing our Xiao family's empire into the abyss." "Xiao Tingyuan?" The prince laughed derisively, his tone growing more arrogant. "He is far away in the north. Whether he can return is another matter. Even if he does, The capital will already be in my grasp. What can he do? Father, do not place your hopes on him. Simply write the abdication decree. You may remain the retired emperor, and I shall provide for you lavishly. Why create discord among us? You fool, the emperor lamented. Do you think you have triumphed? You are merely sowing the seeds for another's triumph. Before the emperor could finish a sentence, the third prince, Xiao Yu, who had been silently standing behind the prince, suddenly drew his dagger without warning and plunged it deep into the prince's back. The prince's arrogance evaporated, replaced by sheer shock and agony. He struggled to turn his head, only to meet the cold, unfeeling gaze of the third prince. You, third brother, why? Blood gushed from the prince's mouth as he faltered, collapsing to the ground, convulsing twice before lying still. The events unfolded with such swiftness that the old emperor was left in a state of shock, his eyes wide with disbelief.
You were?
What have you done? He stammered, watching as Xiao Yu slowly withdrew the bloodied blade. His demeanor had shed the gentle, unassuming facade and revealed a treacherous nature, no longer masked. Father, he spoke, his voice unnervingly calm. Did you not just say that the elder brother was merely sowing the seeds for another's triumph? This fool has been working tirelessly on my behalf all along. He kicked the lifeless body of the prince. Indeed, this simpleton has cleared many obstacles for me. Everything has been orchestrated by me from the shadows. The emperor's pupils contracted, his face paling to a ghostly white as he pointed a trembling finger at Xiao Yu, rage coursing through him.
So it was you.
You have been the one instigating this all along. You wretched child. I was truly blind, thinking you possessed a gentle nature. Gentle? Xiao Yu scoffed, as if he had heard the grandest joke. Father, in this ravenous palace, can one survive by being gentle? Can one ascend to the dragon throne? He approached the dragon bed, his eyes gleaming with avarice. Only I am the rightful heir to the throne. I have endured and feigned for so long, and today is the culmination of my patience. And I must thank the prince, this fool, for clearing the path for me. He looked at the faltering emperor, his tone turning icy. Now, I must trouble you, father, to draft a new decree of abdication. This time, ensure you write the name correctly. Your third son, Xiao Yu. He cast the bloodied dagger onto the emperor's dragon bed with a resounding clatter, causing the emperor to shudder in fear. If you are willing to write, you may continue to enjoy your twilight years as the retired sovereign. Xiao Yu leaned closer, his voice hissing like a serpent's tongue. Should you refuse, the crime of the crown prince patricide and usurpation is already firmly established. I have no qualms about making this accusation more tangible. All within this palace are mine. The old emperor gazed at his son, now unrecognizable, with a mixture of shock and fury, struggling to catch his breath as he broke into a violent cough. Chapter 105. Betrayal. Xiao Yu appeared to revel in the sight of the emperor in such a state, having always looked up to him, yet now able to trample him underfoot. He leisurely picked up the blank edict stained with ink, clicking his tongue in disdain. Father, what is the point of enduring such suffering? The throne will inevitably pass to someone. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed the edict into the nearby brazier, where flames eagerly devoured the silk. Father, there's no need to dawdle. The ink and brush are readily available. Rewrite it, and you may yet spare yourself further torment. The old emperor's chest heaved violently, his eyes reddening as he rasped, You shall not. Even in death, I will not entrust the realm to a wretched beast like you, one who harms his own kin. Oh. Xiao Yu's gaze turned frigid as he stepped closer to the dragon bed, the tip of his sword glinting ominously as it hovered near the emperor's throat. So, father, are you willing to test whether I dare to slay you? The atmosphere within the hall thickened to a suffocating degree, the emperor glaring at him with labored breaths. Having commanded the winds and waves for decades, he was not easily intimidated. Just as the father and son were locked in their standoff, a panicked voice shattered the silence. Report. A soldier from the royal guard tumbled into the Yangxin Hall, barely managing to salute before breathlessly exclaiming, Your Highness, it's bad. The Shura King has stormed in with his men. They've already breached the Xuanwu Gate and are heading straight for the Yangxin Hall.
What?
They arrived so swiftly. The smugness and malice on Xiao Yu's face froze as he abruptly turned, panic flickering in his eyes for the first time.
Xiao Tingyuan.
How did he get in? Aren't the city gates sealed? What is the royal guard doing? The soldier, trembling in terror, replied, The prince. He seemed to descend from the heavens, and his men are formidable. We cannot hold them back. They are almost at the hall. The flicker of hope ignited in the old emperor's previously despondent eyes, but he coughed violently, fixating on the door. Xiao Yu's expression shifted several times, quickly suppressing his panic. Replaced by a fierce determination, he seized the frail old emperor from the dragon bed, pressing the sword against his neck, and shouted to his loyal subordinates within the hall. What are you panicking for? This is fortuitous. It saves me the trouble of seeking him out. All of you, stand guard at the door. If Xiao Tingyuan dares to enter, he will be a traitor attempting to usurp the throne. Kill him, without mercy. As he spoke, he dragged the emperor towards the door, intending to use him as leverage, creating a dilemma for his adversary. The old emperor struggled for breath, unable to resist. Outside the hall, the sounds of clashing weapons, anguished cries, and furious roars grew nearer, intensifying in ferocity. With a resounding crash, the heavy door of the Yangxin Hall was violently flung open. At the threshold stood Xiao Tingyuan, clad in a dark python robe stained with blood, wielding a long sword with droplets still trickling from its tip. He stood tall like a pine, exuding an aura akin to a vengeful deity returned from the depths of hell, the air thick with his menacing bloodlust. Behind him, a battalion of shadowy guards swiftly surrounded the hall, leaving no avenue of escape. Xiao Tingyuan's piercing gaze fell upon the lifeless body of the crown prince before locking eyes with the venomous Xiao Yu, who was holding the emperor hostage. Xiao Yu, release father. His voice was ice-cold, devoid of warmth. Upon witnessing Xiao Tingyuan's imposing presence, Xiao Yu's expression twitched, yet, with no means of retreat. He pressed the blade more firmly against the emperor's neck, drawing blood.
Xiao Tingyuan, how dare you?
You invade the palace and assault father's quarters. Do you seek rebellion? Surrender immediately, and lay down your weapons. Xiao Tingyuan regarded him as though he had uttered a jest, a cold smirk gracing his lips.
Rebellion?
Xiao Yu, you hold father hostage and have murdered the crown prince. The current circumstances are clear for all to see. Who, pray tell, is the true rebel? With each step he took forward, a palpable pressure accompanied him, akin to an army encroaching. Release father, he commanded, his tone growing even more frigid. Stay back. If you dare take another step, I will kill him. Xiao Yu exclaimed, his emotions surging as he tightened his grip, eliciting a muffled groan of pain from the emperor, who turned an ashen hue. Xiao Tingyuan halted, yet his eyes sharpened, locking onto Xiao Yu like a hawk on its prey. Seeing him pause, Xiao Yu believed he had regained the upper hand, allowing a smirk of triumph to emerge. Xiao Tingyuan, do you think you have one? Look around. The Imperial Guards are under my command. The Qingwan army will arrive shortly. Your meager forces cannot stir a tempest. If you are wise, kneel and beg for mercy. I might just spare your life. Fear not, the Qingwan army is unlikely to arrive. A voice interjected as Xiao Heng entered, dragging the seventh prince by the collar. The seventh prince kicked and shouted, "Let me go. I don't want to be emperor." In an instant, Xiao Yu comprehended that Xiao Heng was using the seventh prince as a hostage, knowing the Qingwan army would hesitate. The situation had turned decidedly against him. He abruptly glanced at the commander of the Imperial Guards stationed within the hall, bellowing, "Commander Fan, why are you still idle? Seize this traitor, Xiao Tingyuan." All eyes gravitated towards the previously silent and stoic commander of the Imperial Guards, a trusted ally of Xiao Yu, commanding the palace's most elite forces. If he acted, the outcome was uncertain. The flicker of hope in the old emperor's eyes dimmed once more as Xiao Yu's face began to reveal a cruel smile of a victor. Commander Fan, standing tall with a resolute expression, did not act immediately, instead calmly turning his gaze towards Xiao Tingyuan. Yes. He unsheathed his blade with a sharp clang. The next moment, he moved like a flash of lightning. However, his target was not Xiao Tingyuan, but rather the unsuspecting Xiao Yu, who was within arm's reach.
You?
Xiao Yu's smile vanished completely, replaced by sheer astonishment. He could not comprehend what had just transpired. With a loud crack, Commander Fan executed a swift and precise disarm. Seizing Xiao Yu's sword-wielding wrist and twisting it forcefully, Xiao Yu let out a cry of agony as his sword clattered to the ground. Simultaneously, Commander Fan's other hand, like a vice, clamped around Xiao Yu's throat, forcefully slamming him to the ground. All of this transpired in the blink of an eye, leaving everyone momentarily stunned. "Seize him!" Commander Fan commanded with a deep voice. The soldiers who had previously obeyed Xiao Yu, along with the eunuchs, stood dumbstruck, unsure of what to do.
Meanwhile,
the elite guards under Commander Fan swiftly redirected their weapons, quickly subduing the bewildered rebels and disarming them. In a heartbeat, the situation had been entirely overturned. The old emperor, freed from restraint, collapsed onto the ground, coughing violently, astonished by this miraculous reversal. Meanwhile, Xiao Yu, pinned to the ground, struggled to lift his head, glaring fiercely at Commander Fan.
Fan Tian.
How dare you betray me? Why? I treated you well. Why? He screamed, unable to accept this bitter reality. He meticulously orchestrated every detail, yet he could never have anticipated that his most trusted commander of the Imperial Guards was, in fact, a pawn of Xiao Tingyuan. This was nothing short of a profound mockery of all his intellect and scheming. Chapter 106. A Shift in the Winds. Commander Fan maintained an impassive demeanor, his voice steady as granite. Your Highness, I have never pledged my loyalty to you. My unwavering allegiance lies with His Majesty and the laws of the court. Before departing the capital, the King of Shura entrusted me with a solemn duty, should any turmoil arise within the city. The safety of His Majesty and the stability of the realm must be my foremost priority. You conspired with the Crown Prince, plotting treason and holding His Majesty hostage. The evidence is irrefutable. How could I possibly conspire with you? His words resonated with authority, leaving Xiao Yu's countenance as pale as parchment. At this moment, Xiao Tingyuan stepped forward slowly, looking down from a position of power at the wretched Xiao Yu, pinned to the ground, devoid of dignity. His gaze betrayed no emotion, only indifference. Xiao Yu, you fancied yourself a master strategist, biding your time, manipulating the crown prince, using others to eliminate obstacles, only to emerge and reap the rewards. He let out a derisive laugh, leaning slightly closer to gaze into Xiao Yu's eyes, which were filled with resentment and bloodshot fury. But you have lost. Ultimately, you were merely a pawn outplayed. These words struck Xiao Yu like a final, crushing blow, obliterating all his ambitions, schemes, and patience, rendering them a grand farce. He believed himself to be the cunning player, yet he failed to realize that from the very beginning, he was merely a rather erratic piece on another's chessboard, ultimately crushed without mercy.
Xiao Tingyuan.
I refuse to accept this. I refuse. Xiao Yu collapsed in despair, releasing a desperate, defiant howl, struggling furiously. Yet Commander Fan held him firmly, rendering him immobile, consumed by impotent rage. Xiao Tingyuan turned away, striding toward the shaken emperor, clasping his fists and speaking gravely. Father, your son has arrived too late to your rescue, causing you distress. The instigator of the rebellion has been apprehended. Please rest assured, Father. The old emperor gazed upon the son before him, then cast his eyes toward the subdued Xiao Yu and the lifeless body of the crown prince, his eyes reddening with emotion, overwhelmed by a tide of feelings. His lips trembled, yet he could utter not a single word. Xiao Tingyuan's gaze swept over the stunned rebellious soldiers within the hall, and he coldly declared, Commander Fan, at your service. Fan Tian responded immediately, his expression solemn. Immediately seal all exits of the palace. Entry permitted, but exit forbidden. Conduct a thorough search of all palaces and halls. Any remnants of the rebellion that resist should be captured and imprisoned for trial. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. Understood. Commander Fan showed no hesitation, promptly leading his contingent of Imperial Guards to execute the orders with resolute efficiency. Xiao Tingyuan then turned to Fei Yu. Fei Yu, take the Shadow Guards, bearing my command token, and take control of the city gates, cooperating with Commander Fan to stabilize order within the city. Post notices to the citizens, strictly forbidding any miscreants from taking advantage of this chaos. Yes, my lord. Fei Yu accepted the command token, his figure flashing as he swiftly departed with a team of shadow guards. Once these arrangements were made, Xiao Tingyuan once again leaned down to assess the old emperor's condition. Chief Eunuch Wang, he called, quickly summon the imperial physician. Use the finest medicines. It is imperative that His Majesty recovers. Yes, yes. I shall attend to it at once. The following day, despite the upheaval of the palace coup, the court of the Great Liang convened punctually. However, the atmosphere was unusually tense and oppressive. The dragon throne remained unoccupied, yet beside it stood a grand chair of rosewood. Clad in dark royal attire, Xiao Tingyuan sat there, his expression austere. Though he did not don the dragon robe, the aura of authority and the chilling air of a seasoned warrior emanating from him commanded the entire court. Below, the officials stood divided, many bearing expressions of fear and trepidation. Numerous eyes furtively assessed this Shura King, who had recently quelled the rebellion with an iron fist and taken control of the capital. Without unnecessary preamble, Xiao Tingyuan nodded slightly to the chief eunuch beside him. Stepping forward, Eunuch Wang unfurled a pre-prepared edict, his sharp voice resounding throughout the hall. Crown Prince Xiao Ju and Third Prince Xiao Yu conspired to usurp the throne, committing regicide and patricide, thereby disrupting the court's order. Each act is a heinous crime beyond redemption. He simultaneously proclaimed to the world that the rebellion had been extinguished. The court fell into an eerie silence. The sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Upon completion, Xiao Tingyuan's profound gaze swept over the gathered officials, and he spoke slowly. The evidence of treason is irrefutable, and those culpable have already faced justice. His Majesty has been troubled and is unwell. From this day forth, I shall oversee the state affairs. He paused, continuing, as you are all aware of yesterday's events, should any of you have been coerced into participating in this treason, you may appeal to me within 3 days for leniency based on the circumstances. After 3 days, should any concealment or participation in the rebellion be discovered, do not blame me for my lack of mercy. This mixture of grace and intimidation pacified the anxious officials while providing them an opportunity for redemption. The courtiers bowed their heads, each calculating their next move, yet none dared voice dissent at this moment. Fan Tian, at your service, for your valor in safeguarding His Majesty. Your loyalty is commendable. You are hereby promoted to commander of the capital's army, overseeing all imperial guards and patrols, responsible for the security of the capital. I humbly accept the honor. I shall exert my utmost effort, risking my life without hesitation. Fan Tian knelt on one knee, his voice ringing with conviction. This signified that he now commanded the strongest military force in the capital, becoming Xiao Tingyuan's staunchest ally. Fei Yu, at your service. All shadow guards involved in quelling the rebellion shall receive generous compensation for their sacrifices. Furthermore, all participants in the operation shall be rewarded based on their merits. Thank you, my lord, Fei replied with calm assurance. The remaining deserving generals and officials were likewise honored and promoted. Xiao Tingyuan was clear in his rewards and punishments, generously placing his core supporters in pivotal positions. Before long, under Fan Tian's precise execution, the Imperial Guards and Shadow Guards underwent a complete overhaul. All officers with close ties to the Third Prince and Crown Prince were dismissed and investigated, while numerous lower-ranking officers were replaced. Loyal and capable personnel drawn from the Northern Frontier Forces, alongside clean-slate lower-ranking officers from within the Imperial Guards, were rapidly elevated. Through this decisive action, Xiao Tingyuan cleared obstacles with a thunderous resolve, gaining the moral high ground through his rescue efforts. Furthermore, by means of rewards and restructuring, he firmly established control over the capital's military might. His prestige soared to unparalleled heights, leaving no room for dissent within the court. All were acutely aware that the heavens of the Great Liang had irrevocably changed. Chapter 107, Northern Yan's Provocation. A series of post-rebellion measures proceeded methodically. The Crown Prince received a hasty burial befitting a prince, while the third Prince Xiao Yu was granted poison, swiftly ending his grievous life. The remaining conspirators faced severe punishment as a cautionary measure. The seventh prince was placed under house arrest, awaiting his fate. The Jingnan and Longxi armies surrendered, with their commander detained for examination, while the soldiers were either integrated into the ranks or dismissed to return to their fields. Thus, the military threats both within and around the capital were entirely eradicated, leading to a gradual stabilization of the situation. Since that day, the old emperor remained in a stupor, occasionally awakening with a vacant stare, muttering, "Unfilial son, unfilial son." The imperial physician privately reported to Xiao Tingyuan that His Majesty's vitality had suffered greatly, his spirit diminished. It was feared he had little time left. Xiao Tingyuan stood quietly before the emperor's bed, his eyes dimming momentarily as a rare flicker of compassion emerged. He contemplated how this emperor, once a towering figure commanding the world, now faced such a desolate twilight, torn by familial strife. Cold and solitary amidst the splendor of his empire, trapped within the confines of his own desolation. Reflecting upon this, even his heart, as cold as iron, could not help but feel a pang of sorrow. In the northern frontier, the news spread faster than the winds along the borders. Within days, detailed military reports regarding the earth-shattering palace coup in the capital were urgently dispatched to the northern commander's camp. Qingwan was engrossed in strategizing over a sand table when the urgent news from the capital reached her ears, causing her heart to leap into her throat. "Your Highness, urgent news from the capital." The messenger knelt, presenting a sealed letter. Qingwan swiftly seized the letter, tearing it open with urgency. Her eyes darted across the text, and upon reading that the rebellion had been quelled, the crown prince executed, and the third prince granted death, her previously taut shoulders finally relaxed, and she exhaled a long, relieved sigh. "Excellent, simply splendid," she murmured softly, her eyes sparkling with uncontainable joy. Heaven knows how many burdens she had borne beneath her composed exterior during these trying days. Immediately, she summoned the generals to share this good news. Within the tent, Silence reigned for a moment before an explosion of jubilance erupted. Damn it! I knew our lord would triumph. Those scoundrels were no match for him. Splendid! Now who dares to withhold our military supplies? The generals, their faces alight with elation, pounded their fists on the table, excitement spilling over. They had fought their way out of a sea of corpses with Xiao Tingyuan, and his establishment of a stronghold in the capital signified that good days were ahead for the Northern Army, as well as a chance to vent their frustrations. Observing the exuberance of her comrades, Qingwan raised her hand to quell their excitement. Though her smile remained, her tone grew serious. It is indeed a momentous occasion that our lord has achieved such a resounding victory in the capital. However, gentlemen, this is not the time to relax. We must keep our wits about us. She approached the sand table, placing her finger firmly on the direction of Beiyan. Our lord has just subdued the internal strife. The capital lies in ruins and cannot afford to attend to us for the time being. The wolves of Beiyan are keenly aware of this and will surely sense an opportunity. If they discover our lord is absent from the northern front, they may seize the chance to strike at us. Her gaze, sharp and penetrating, swept across each general. Relay my orders. The entire army is to enter a state of maximum readiness immediately. All passes, outposts, and patrols must double their efforts and expand their ranges. No troops are to remain idle at night. All must be deployed. Yes, General. The commanders responded, their earlier elation swiftly replaced by a fervent resolve. Qingwan spoke sternly. Inform our brothers that our lord is watching us from the capital. The northern front must remain stable for him to address affairs of state with peace of mind. Should anyone falter at this critical juncture and allow the Beiyan barbarians to take advantage, not only will our lord not spare them, but I, Qingwan, shall be the first to enforce military law. Do you all understand? Understood. We vow to defend the northern front with our lives. We shall never bring shame upon our lord. The resounding battle cries echoed through the air. In the Beiyan camp, almost simultaneously, scouts relayed confirmed news back to the war tent. Inside the golden tent, Yan Nancheng examined the confidential report, his gaze flickering uncertainly. The turmoil within Daliang. The crown prince dead. The third prince dead? That killing god, Xiao Tingyuan, has emerged victorious? And he has become the regent? He set the report down, drumming his fingers on the table as silence enveloped the tent. Soon, a fervent proponent of war could no longer restrain himself, exclaiming with excitement, Commander, a heaven-sent opportunity. Xiao Tingyuan has just undergone internal strife. He must have suffered considerable losses among his ranks. He is likely preoccupied with purging the capital and soothing the populace, leaving the northern front unattended. This is the perfect moment for us to descend and exact our revenge. I second this motion. We cannot afford to miss this chance. My lord. Yet, opposing voices emerged among the generals. My lord, we must not act impulsively.
Who is Xiao Tingyuan?
He wields his military might like a ghost, and his methods are exceedingly ruthless. The fact that he quelled the internal strife so swiftly indicates his strength and control are far beyond what we anticipate. Another added, moreover. Our scouts report that the Northern Army is not only stable, but has heightened its vigilance. The one in charge now is Xiao Tingyuan's woman, Qingwan, and she is no trivial opponent, governing the troops with utmost rigor. Should we attack now, we may not gain any advantage. If we become embroiled in a stalemate, once Xiao Tingyuan regains his momentum, his vengeance will be fierce, and our nation will be in peril. Listening to the debate, Yan Nancheng furrowed his brow. He had experienced Xiao Tingyuan's tactics firsthand, yet the allure of the bountiful lands in the south and the temptation to exploit the situation gnawed at him.
Yan.
He mused internally. He was indeed curious to engage her directly. Ultimately, Yan Nancheng opted for a compromise. He did not authorize a large-scale invasion but permitted frontline generals to conduct small-scale probes. Thus, in the following days, skirmishes along the northern front surged. The Beiyan patrols intentionally crossed borders, clashing with the Northern Army's patrols, resulting in mutual casualties. Beiyan's archers even stealthily approached the passes at night, shooting arrows inscribed with provocative messages onto the city walls. These actions were minor in scale but exceedingly vexing, akin to a swarm of flies, persistently testing the Northern Army's limits. Their intent was clear, to ascertain whether the Northern Army, now without Xiao Tingyuan's oversight, had become a toothless tiger. How quickly it would react, and what remained of its combat prowess. However, each probe by the Beiyan forces met an iron wall. Qingwan commanded with unwavering resolve, having already issued orders for each division to prepare countermeasures, ensuring they would not recklessly fall into ambushes. The soldiers of the Northern Army, fueled by determination to honor their lord and refuse to be underestimated by Bai Yan, responded swiftly and with ferocity. Bai Yan's harassing squads were repeatedly ambushed, and the patrols emerged from skirmishes with losses, leaving behind some of their dead. The resolute counterattacks of the Northern Army left the Bai Yan frontline commanders increasingly grim-faced. The results of their probing quickly reached Yan Nancheng. He pondered over the battle reports for an extended period before finally sighing, suppressing the stirring greed within him. Very well. Issue orders to the front line to suspend all actions. We shall continue to observe. He had to concede that Yi Qingwan's capabilities were not inferior to those of the king of Azura. If he were to initiate battle at this moment, he would gain nothing. Chapter 108. The grand finale 1 month later, within the Yangxin Palace, the scent of medicinal herbs nearly overpowered the lingering aroma of dragon saliva. In the span of a month, the old emperor had withered away, lying beneath a bright yellow quilt, his breath faint. On this day, he appeared to regain a semblance of clarity, his murky eyes sweeping over the ministers and royal princes kneeling before him. Ultimately resting upon the tall figure beside the screen, Xiao Tingyuan, Elder Gong, tears in his eyes, held the prepared edict and knelt to listen for the emperor's decree. The old emperor's lips moved, his voice hoarse to the point of being nearly inaudible, yet each word struck the hearts of those present. I, having brought disorder through my shortcomings, have betrayed the realm. The fourth prince, Qingwan, is endowed with both literary and martial prowess, deeply virtuous and filial. Having quelled the rebellion and stabilized the nation, thus I decree him to ascend the throne and become the emperor. With his last ounce of strength, he raised his frail hand. Xiao Tingyuan stepped forward, silently kneeling to accept the heavy edict. Do not learn from me. The old emperor uttered his final 3 words. His gaze fading completely, his arm falling limp, and he passed away. Your Majesty. The palace was instantly filled with cries of mourning. Xiao Tingyuan clutched the edict tightly, his fingertips turning white as he bowed deeply before the dragon bed. Following the emperor's passing, the nation could not endure a single day without a ruler. The Bureau of Astronomy selected an auspicious date, and the coronation ceremony for the new emperor proceeded as scheduled. On this day, the capital basked in clear skies and bright sunshine. Within and beyond the imperial city, banners waved, and soldiers of the imperial guard, clad in gleaming armor, stood solemnly along the royal road, extending all the way to the towering palace gates, weapons standing like a forest, silent and imposing. At the appointed hour, bells and drums resounded, and the solemn and grand ceremonial music reverberated across the sky. Xiao Tingyuan, adorned in a deep black dragon robe and crowned with gold, ascended the jade steps paved with white marble, making his way towards the exalted dragon throne. Behind him, civil and military officials, ranked by status, knelt in unison like a tidal wave. Long live our emperor, long live, long live. Xiao Tingyuan turned to face the crowd, slowly raising his hand. In that instant, all sound ceased, and it felt as if he stood alone in the universe. The ceremonial officer loudly proclaimed the Edict of Ascension, announcing a great amnesty across the land and establishing the new era name as Qingwan, signifying the continuation of the divine mandate and the stabilization of the realm. The first year of Qingwan began at this moment. News of Xiao Tingyuan's ascension quickly reached the Bai Yan war tent. Yan Nancheng examined the detailed intelligence returned by the scouts, his expression complex and inscrutable. He sat alone in the tent for a long while, the wine jug on the table emptying and refilling in a ceaseless cycle. Eventually, he let out a bitter laugh and downed the strong liquor in his cup. He had contemplated leading his troops southward for a fierce assault, yet he understood that she would undoubtedly fight to the death to stop him. Moreover, if Xiao Tingyuan were to free his hands, he would surely not relent. At that point, Bai Yan would be plunged into a protracted war, and the populace would suffer greatly. Withdraw the troops, he commanded after much deliberation. Before long, Bai Yan dispatched envoys bearing lavish gifts to the capital of Daliang, presenting a state letter to the new emperor, Xiao Tingyuan, expressing their willingness to acknowledge Daliang as their sovereign and to restore amicable relations, forging a lasting alliance. After weighing the pros and cons, Xiao Tingyuan acquiesced to Bai Yan's request. With internal strife now quelled, the nation stood on the brink of renewal, the treasury depleted, and the people yearning for stability rather than endless warfare. Thus, the flames of conflict at the borders were temporarily extinguished, ushering in a long-awaited peace. The new emperor had scarcely settled onto the dragon throne when another momentous occasion rapidly ascended the agenda, the crowning of the empress. The Bureau of Astronomy busied itself once again, finally selecting an auspicious date. On this day, the capital erupted in jubilation, even more so than during the enthronement ceremony. The palace was adorned with lanterns and colorful decorations, a red carpet stretching from the palace gates to the front of the ancestral temple where the coronation would take place. Beiyan also sent envoys bearing precious congratulatory gifts, all meticulously chosen by Yan Nanshan himself. Qingwan was roused from her slumber before dawn by the palace maids and matrons, who guided her through a ritual of bathing, incense, changing of garments, and beautification. Layer upon layer of intricate and splendid empress robes enveloped her, heavy and vibrant, adorned with lifelike phoenix embroidery in gold thread. Her dark hair was meticulously styled, crowned with a dragon and phoenix headdress encrusted with pearls and gemstones, both resplendent and regal. Your Highness, you are truly the most beautiful person I have ever seen, the old matron exclaimed earnestly as she adjusted the final touches of her attire. Our mistress is undoubtedly the finest woman in the world, Sui Air chimed in. Qingwan gazed at the unfamiliar, yet exquisitely adorned reflection in the mirror, taking a deep breath. No longer was she the valiant General Yi galloping through the north's sandy winds. She was now the Empress poised to embody the world. She clenched her hands within her sleeves, reminding herself to remain composed. The grandeur of the ceremony exceeded her expectations. Officials and noble women knelt in reverent throngs. Amidst the music and ritual, she stepped forward towards the man standing at the pinnacle. Xiao Tingyuan also donned a ceremonial robe befitting the occasion. Standing tall as his gaze traversed the crowd, landing squarely upon her. His normally icy eyes, reminiscent of a frigid pool, now sparkled with rare warmth. The royal steward proclaimed the edict, his voice resonating throughout the hall. Xiao Tingyuan took her hand, standing side by side to receive the thunderous shouts of "Long live the Empress," echoing like a tidal wave. The news spread to every corner of Daliang, reaching even a scholarly institution in the southern waters. The young teacher, Gu Hanwen, listened to the children's bright recitations but found his gaze drifting toward the distant capital. He had heard from passing merchants of the momentous events, the new emperor's ascension, the establishment of the era Chang'an, the pacification of Beiyan, and, of course, her elevation to empress. A faint smile graced his lips, a blend of relief and a touch of wistfulness. His father, implicated in treason, had been exiled, and he had distanced himself from his family due to a rejected marriage, choosing instead to live as a teacher in Jiangnan, escaping disaster. He ultimately selected this path, embracing a life removed from courtly strife, imparting wisdom to the next generation in his own modest way. Perhaps this was the best he could do for the woman who had once dazzled his life. He returned his attention to the children, guiding them in their studies. Qingwan's ascension to empress dramatically altered her daily existence. No longer could she practice archery with rolled-up sleeves, nor could she gallivant out of the city at will. Each day upon waking, she was met with the affairs of the palace and the courtesies of noble women, along with a multitude of rules and rituals. She adapted swiftly, managing the inner palace with remarkable efficiency. With a blend of grace and authority, she rewarded the obedient servants generously, while those who relied on their status or sought to stir trouble found her reprimands sharp and striking, instilling a sense of fear that deterred any further misconduct. Within months, the atmosphere of the inner palace transformed into one of peace and order. The once haughty Cui Ruahua found her father steadfast in loyalty during the upheaval, preserving their family's safety. She herself demonstrated intelligence and poise, behaving appropriately during audiences with the empress, showing due respect. Qingwan bore no malice towards her, knowing that as long as she remained compliant, she could enjoy a life of tranquility. In contrast, Shun Yunshu was less fortunate. Her father's involvement in treason led to his imprisonment and punishment. Their family wealth was confiscated, the male members exiled, and the female relatives relegated to the Imperial Music Bureau. In the imperial study, Xiao Tingyuan labored over official documents late into the night. Qingwan would often bring him a bowl of soup she had personally prepared, quietly keeping him company as he worked. When he became frustrated with the old minister's convoluted rhetoric, she would approach him, gently smoothing the furrowed lines of his brow with her fingers, softly inquiring, "Your Majesty, what troubles you?" Occasionally, she would offer her insights regarding the documents. "Your Majesty, although Beiyan claims fealty, we must be vigilant against their trading practices, ensuring they do not substitute inferior goods for our quality grains. Perhaps we could appoint a dedicated overseer to enforce strict regulations." Her suggestions often bore a unique perspective, incisively addressing the core issues, frequently illuminating Xiao Tingyuan's understanding. He would often engage her in prolonged discussions, teasingly dubbing her his personal advisor. Yet Qingwan would merely smile and shake her head. "I humbly offer my opinions for your Majesty's consideration." ultimately. The significant matters of state must be determined by you and the ministers. She navigated the delicate balance expertly, never overstepping her bounds, merely presenting her views. Xiao Tingyuan, for his part, was not obstinately stubborn and would heed her valuable suggestions. From selecting talented individuals to appointing them wisely, promoting irrigation projects, and striving for good governance, Daliang soon flourished with vibrant vitality. As the night deepened, the flickering candlelight cast a warm glow across the imperial study. Having finished the final document, Xiao Tingyuan rubbed his temples and looked up to find Qingwan leaning against the side of the soft couch, perusing a book by the light of a palace lamp. The gentle illumination outlined her profile, her long lashes casting a serene and beautiful shadow. A stirring sensation gripped him. He rose and, without hesitation, took the book from her hands and set it aside. Qingwan looked up, about to speak, when she felt herself lifted effortlessly into his arms. "Your Majesty?" she exclaimed softly, instinctively wrapping her arms around his neck. Xiao Tingyuan's gaze rested on her, his eyes twinkling with a teasing yet profound mirth as he carried her past the screen, gently laying her upon the dragon bed. He leaned down, propping himself on one arm, his gaze ablaze with intensity, as if harboring stars within. "Empress," he began, his voice tinged with a husky resonance, carrying a weight of significance. "The hour grows late. Perhaps we should attend to more pressing matters?" As Qingwan found herself ensnared within the confines of his embrace, she could distinctly feel the warmth radiating from him. His insinuation was unmistakably evident, and a blush crept across her cheeks as her gaze instinctively darted elsewhere. Striving to maintain her composure, she softly retorted, "What pressing matters?" Xiao Tingyuan chuckled softly, the sound reverberating through his chest. He reached out, his fingertips brushing against her warm earlobe before gliding to her delicate cheek. Their breaths mingled, the atmosphere thickening with an unmistakable intimacy. "Naturally, to expand our lineage," he murmured. He murmured softly, his gaze darkening, and placed a kiss upon her lips. "I have ascended the throne for several months now. Yet you remain the sole inhabitant of my harem. The memorials from those elderly ministers in the court have nearly piled into mountains. My empress, can you bear to see me endure such pressure alone?" Before she could respond, he leaned down to seize that sweetness he had longed for. The golden silk curtains gently fell, obscuring the room's spring light, leaving only the flickering candlelight swaying in the night breeze. Time passed swiftly, as fleeting as a galloping steed. The spring of the second year of Qingwan arrived seemingly earlier than in previous years. The willow branches within the palace walls sprouted fresh greens, and the forsythia in the imperial garden unfurled tender yellow buds, exuding a vibrant vitality everywhere. Outside Qingwan Palace, Xiao Tingyuan stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his figure erect like a pine tree, his expression calm, yet tense as still water. His deep-set eyes fixated unblinkingly on the tightly shut palace doors, from within which occasional muffled groans of anguish emerged, akin to a dull knife repeatedly sawing at his heart. "Your Majesty, fret not," whispered Eunuch Wang, bowing slightly. "The Empress is favored by heaven. She and the child will surely be safe." Time seemed to stretch interminably, each breath a torment. Suddenly, a loud wail of a newborn shattered the silence, and Xiao Tingyuan's taut shoulders relaxed instantly, his eyes igniting with ecstatic light, instinctively propelling him towards the inner chamber. "Your Majesty, please wait. There is one more. There is another." The midwife's hurried yet joyful voice resonated from within, halting his steps. His heart surged again, this time infused with a greater sense of anticipation amidst the worry. Before long, another cry, somewhat weaker yet equally clear and powerful, echoed through the palace. "Congratulations, Your Majesty! Rejoice, Your Majesty!" The once closed doors finally swung open, revealing the midwife and palace maids, their faces alight with joy as they knelt on the ground. The midwife excitedly reported, "The Empress has given birth to twins, a healthy little prince and a beautiful little princess. Both mother and children are safe. Excellent, excellent, excellent. There shall be rewards for all." The corners of Xiao Tingyuan's tightly pursed lips finally lifted, and his smile grew ever wider, a genuine joy emanating from his very core. Unable to contain himself any longer, he strode into the inner chamber. The faint scent of blood lingered in the air, but was soon dispelled by a soothing, warm fragrance. Qingwan lay exhausted upon the brocade quilt, her hair damp with sweat clinging to her forehead, her complexion somewhat pale. Beside her were two tiny infants swaddled in bright yellow cloth. Xiao Tingyuan approached the bedside, leaning down to carefully brush aside her wet hair, bestowing upon her a kiss filled with gratitude. Qingwan, you have worked so hard. Qingwan weakly shook her head, a gentle smile gracing her lips. Your Majesty, please look at the children. Only then did Xiao Tingyuan turn his gaze to the two little ones. The elder brother seemed to possess a fiery temperament, furrowing his tiny brows and occasionally sniffling, his small hands tightly clenched. The sister, however, appeared much calmer, her eyes squinted shut, her little mouth unconsciously smacking. Her fair face still adorned with fine, soft hair. These were his children, the fruits of his and the Empress's bloodline intertwined. An indescribable emotion instantly filled his chest, a sense of fulfillment stronger than wielding the world itself. He excitedly reached out a finger, gently touching the prince's tiny fist, then caressing the princess's delicate cheek. Just like you, he remarked, his eyes brimming with a tenderness that could drown. I believe the elder brother's brows resemble those of your Majesty. While the younger sister's lips also mirror yours, Qingwan softly replied, her gaze fixed lovingly upon the children. The Emperor and Empress exchanged a knowing smile. Their myriad affections conveyed in silence. The warm morning light streamed through the window, enveloping the family of four in a soft golden hue, as beautiful as a painting. Soon, news of the Empress giving birth to twins spread throughout the court and beyond. This was seen as a momentous omen for the Qingwan dynasty, symbolizing a flourishing royal lineage and a double blessing for the nation. The court announced a general amnesty, reducing taxes, and the whole realm rejoiced. The banquet for the full moon was held with great grandeur. On that day, the little prince and princess were carried out by their wet nurses to receive congratulations from the officials and noblewomen. The two children, clad in specially made auspicious garments and adorned with longevity locks, looked like exquisite carvings, neither crying nor fussing, their big, sparkling eyes curiously surveying the bustling world, melting the hearts of all present. Xiao Tingyuan bestowed the name Xiao Chen upon the prince, derived from the stars, symbolizing nobility and brilliance, and named the princess Xiaoyu, taken from a divine pearl, signifying precious beauty, a jewel in his palm. From that moment onward, the once quiet palace was filled with the resounding cries of infants and the sounds of joyful laughter. Amidst handling state affairs, Xiao Tingyuan found his greatest delight in visiting Qingwan Palace, cradling his little prince and princess, watching Qingwan tenderly care for them. In that moment, the sovereign laid aside all his regal authority, becoming merely a husband and father immersed in profound happiness. The end.